It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 801, South American Alliance Moves West. Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes meets with William IV and promises to strengthen security cooperation with the Netherlands. La Vanguardia de España. This southern European newspaper reported this bold black headline at the beginning. Praxedes Mateo Sagasta, the Spanish Liberal Prime Minister who was visiting Australia in the Netherlands, met with William IV of the Netherlands on August 8, 1880. After the talks, the two sides issued a statement, saying that they would push the cooperation between Spain and the South American Alliance to a new stage, and expressed concerns about the Far East Japan Ben and the strengthening of the military forces of the United States and Britain in the Pacific. Praxedes went to the royal residence in Sydney in the evening of August 8, 1880, and met with William IV. The two sides talked about possible conflicts in the Pacific and the development of the situation in the Americas and reached a consensus. Spain and the Netherlands will remain consistent on issues such as South America and the Pacific, oppose the additional threats from Britain and France to the Kingdom of Siam and Southeast Asia, and once the confrontation between the two forces attempts to change the current status quo on the Southeast Asian peninsula, the two countries will jointly promote a free and open Pacific and American regions. After the talks, the two sides issued a joint statement saying that Spain and the Netherlands will push cooperation to a new stage. The statement expressed concerns about the strengthening of British military power in the Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes and William IV also held a joint press conference. Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes said that Spain will study participating in the Council of the Union of South America plus Partner Countries Conference. Spain and Union of South America decided to build a security territory cooperation. Of course, in Asia, Spain will fully cooperate with the Netherlands and maintain the commitment of the two countries to joint defense. The next day, Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes also inspected the Eastern Fleet headquartered in Sydney Harbour, the Netherlands, and took the Dutch battleship New South Wales for a tour of Sydney Harbour overseas. At the dinner in the evening, he thanked the capitalists in the city of Sydney for their support for Spain's investment in the Philippines project. In addition to meeting with William IV, Praxedes also met with Dutch Prime Minister Linden and Dutch Foreign Minister Joseph Beit. This was the first time that the Spanish Prime Minister visited the Dutch Far East again after a lapse of 3 years. La Vanguardia de España. The Spanish Prime Minister visited the Far East of the Netherlands, and the trend of European powers becoming Far Eastern is becoming more and more obvious. In this report, the Prime Minister listed the land area that the Tsarist Russian Empire has been developing eastward from the north of the Eurasian continent since a few decades ago. There is also the maritime expansion of Spain, the Netherlands, Portugal, etc. since the 17th century. Finally, it talks about Britain inheriting the legacy of Spain and the Netherlands in the Far East, and surpassing them, and now even conquering India. The Netherlands has migrated to the Far East in the past 20 years, even moving its capital there, and has become a veritable Far Eastern country. Britain is also accelerating its expansion in India, Southeast Asia, and France has never stopped its expansion in Eastern Southeast Asia. Now Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes has visited the Far East of the Netherlands, and Spain is also accelerating its pace of strengthening military cooperation with the Netherlands. The trend of Europe becoming Asia-Pacific is becoming more and more obvious. What are your observations on this? This report also quoted the comments and analysis of Ms., an expert on the British Empire project at the Netherlands Centre for Strategic and International Studies, to explain the mystery. It is obvious that Praxedes' trip to the Far East Netherlands is to get closer to the Netherlands and make further military and economic investments in Asia. This is done under the situation of Britain and France against the Netherlands. It can be seen how determined Spain is to do this time. At the same time, it is also obvious how close the relationship between the Netherlands and Spain has become. In terms of military operations, there are not many joint operations between Spain and the Netherlands, or between Spain and the Nordic Alliance and the South American Alliance where the Netherlands are located. But there is no doubt that Spain is strengthening its all-round alliance with the Netherlands and intends to create a Far Eastern version of the Nordic Alliance. Now the Nordic Alliance's eastward shift is the first stage of action. In other words, The Far Eastern War has not yet achieved the goal of establishing a Far Eastern alliance. At present, the Netherlands and Spain have not yet officially reached an agreement on the establishment of the South American Union, but at the joint press conference yesterday, Praxedes also expressed that he would actively participate in the South American Union Council. The South American Union Council is a political institution established in accordance with Article 10 of the South American Union. That is to say, within the entire framework of the South American Union, it has a military committee, which is mainly responsible for the political affairs of the South American Union member states, and an international liaison office, which is mainly responsible for the diplomatic affairs of the South American Union member states. Spain's participation in the South American Union Council is a key step in its quasi-alliance relationship with the South American Union. The Netherlands' Far Eastern ally, King Chulalongkorn of the Kingdom of Siam, had already expressed his intention to set up a permanent office in the South American Union Council before Spain. In other words, the two countries are clearly actively moving closer to the South American Union. This situation has laid a very important foundation for the creation of a Far Eastern version of the South American Union in the future. But at present, there is no entity of the Far East version of the South American Union. It is just the westward movement of the South American Union. Judging from the information released by Praxedes and His Majesty William IV at the joint press conference in Sydney yesterday, this view can be confirmed. The westward expansion of the South American Union is to absorb a large number of idle countries and small and medium-sized countries in the surrounding areas into the South American Union circle, for the Netherlands to use or use each other. This is already a fact. However, it is easy for the South American Union to expand westward to absorb the Kingdom of Siam, but it is indeed difficult to absorb the Qing and the Kingdom of Prussia. Therefore, the Netherlands started with Spain, which had the Philippines as a colony, and started with an autonomous province. It was a slow process. Finally, the experts said, however, the South American alliance is to strengthen its deep-level military penetration in the Far East. This includes two meanings. One is to strengthen the political, diplomatic and military exchanges between the South American alliance and the Kingdom of Siam and Spain. The other meaning is to strengthen cooperation from the military level, including land and sea. Praxedes even said frankly that Spain wants to raise the level of cooperation with the South American alliance to a new stage. In the future, the South American alliance may actively participate in the cooperation between the Kingdom of Siam and Spain in military projects, including military projects such as Spain dispatching troops to the Far East and the Kingdom of Siam resisting the invasion of Britain and France, including military personnel exchanges and training, joint military exercises, etc. But it may take some time to achieve real military results, such as direct participation in the war. Chapter 802 Japan, Tokyo, Fushimi Palace. Japan, Tokyo, Fushimi Palace. Emperor Meiji, I believe you have all seen the recent changes in the international situation. Britain's maritime hegemony has begun to fade. France's power has been halved due to the North-South split. It seems that her previous plan needs to be modified. Prime Minister Seigo Takamori, Your Majesty is right. No one has ever thought that the Netherlands would be so strong. Europe is far away from our Far East. Now the German Empire is clearly sitting on the mountain and watching the fight between tigers. The same is true for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The influence of Britain and France in the Far East has always been limited. It is still difficult to gain the upper hand against the Netherlands. Now the Netherlands has the Kingdom of Siam and the support of the South American alliance, and its power is huge. Spain is clearly on the side of the Netherlands and is not afraid of Britain. It seems that we are wrong to lean towards Britain. Foreign Minister Takeubo Toshimichi took advantage of the situation and sneered, Japan and the Netherlands have always had friendly relations. Now because of the Prime Minister's previous pro-British policy, the Netherlands must have a barrier against our country. Even if we make friendly gestures to the Netherlands may not appreciate it. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kido Takeyoshi, played the role of a peacemaker and said, "You two, both of you serve His Majesty and Japan. Now, whether it is the Netherlands or the United Kingdom, they are countries we must make friends with." After more than 10 years of reform politics, our country has now entered the ranks of rapidly developing countries. With the help of the power and technology of Britain and the Netherlands, they will escort us, which is the ultimate goal. So back to the starting point, we may need to solve the problem of improving the attitude of the Netherlands towards us. Seigo Takamori hesitated and worriedly. Now the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States has broken down. The United States offended the Netherlands because it openly supported us. Now if we send an ambiguous signal to the Netherlands, will the United States blame us for it? The United States is the source of many technologies for our country. Kido Takayoshi denied it. Now President Stephen of the United States is almost voiceless when facing the Dutch. The Dutch are extremely powerful in the United States, and their capital even occupies 1/3 of the United States. The two countries almost fell out some time ago, and there were even rumors that Dutch capital was pouring out of the United States and turning to Mexico and South American countries, which caused panic in the United States. The American countries even showed their eagerness to move, as if they wanted to eat up the American capital alive. What's more, there are many Dutch officials in the Democratic Party, and the same is true for the Republican Party. Because our House of Representatives has connections with their congressmen, we learned that someone in the U.S. Congress is said to be planning to launch an impeachment action against Stevens Hongtong. The internal political arena of the United States is in chaos. Therefore, our approach can only play a role in promoting the overthrow of the United States at most, but it will not cause a diplomatic storm. Seigo Takamori. But if the impeachment succeeds, President Stevens steps down, and someone else from the Democratic Party becomes president, I am worried that they will retaliate against us. Hearing this, Takubo Toshimichi and Kido Takayoshi did not dare to continue the topic. After all, this could really happen. They are all veterans who have studied Western politics for many years. The three of them and Emperor Meiji are the four most important people in the Meiji Restoration. So they are very clear about the political chakras in the West. It is common for you to go back and forth, you slap me, and I punch you back. America feels ashamed, so Japan needs to be prepared. Emperor Meiji said at this time, since His Excellency Kido Takayoshi has contact with American congressmen, then it is up to you to solve the sequelae on the American side. Kido Takayoshi's face turned bitter when he heard this, but he still responded respectfully. Emperor Meiji said to Seigo Takamori, you will take care of the British side. After all, Japan has become an excuse for them to interfere in East Asia. This excuse is also a reliance on our basis for fighting against the Qing dynasty. We cannot afford to lose it. Seigo Takamori dared not say no, so he agreed. When Amakubo Toshimichi saw that Emperor Meiji had set his eyes on him, he smiled bitterly in his heart, and then said solemnly, Your Majesty, I will go to the Netherlands. I am willing to go to Melbourne as an envoy to ease the tension between us and the Netherlands. Emperor Meiji shook his head and said firmly, it is not to ease the relationship, but to strengthen the relationship. After this contest, whether Britain is strong on the outside but weak on the inside, it is a bit disappointing to us. The toughness of the Netherlands and the interest chain behind it have been underestimated by everyone. You should have seen that even the German Empire, which has always been called the second most powerful country in Europe, does not seem to have the ability to mobilize its allies like the Netherlands. Emperor Meiji, so, setting up such an enemy for yourself, isn't this asking for trouble? Our original reforms were based on Japan having good Western allies. Now among Western countries, the number of Dutch allies is not the top ones, but there are indeed quite a few. We have a tense relationship with them, and we may be forced to take sides in the West, which is not conducive to a reform politics. So, His Excellency Takubo Toshimichi, get rid of the Netherlands, and we must take it down. Soon after, on August 13, 1880, the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that is, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, announced that Takubo Toshimichi, the chief official of the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, had accepted the invitation of the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs and would start a visit to the Netherlands on August 15. As soon as the news came out, Britain and France were angry, and the United States was also furious, and they all issued angry accountability to Japan. However, Qing and guerrilla were caught off guard, but they carefully verified with the heads of the Dutch embassies in the two countries and observed the attitude of the Netherlands. In short, countries around the world entered a state of chaos. At the same time, the Japanese Foreign Ministry's minister published his own articles in major Dutch newspapers, explaining the historical relationship between Japan and the Netherlands. The last feudal regime in Japanese history was the Edo shogunate, which was roughly the same period as the Qing dynasty. Like the traditional feudal states of the Qing dynasty and Korea, Japan at that time also adopted a policy of seclusion to avoid the impact of the outside world. From the issuance of the first seclusion order in 1633 to the closure of the country by the fleet led by Perry in 1854, Japan was closed to the outside world for more than 200 years. Of course, Japan's trade relations with foreign countries were not completely terminated. It was carried out with certain countries, including maritime trade with the Dutch in Dejima, Nagasaki, and trade was allowed in Nagasaki during the Ming Dynasty and the early Qing Dynasty. In addition, Tsushima, Garuya, Satsuma and Ryukyu, and Matsumi had trade relations with Izo, the natives of Hokkaido. Among them, the Ming Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, Garuya, Ryukyu and Izo are all understood by everyone. They are Japan's neighbors. We have been dealing with each other for thousands of years and know each other well. Of course, it is not necessary to completely block the country. But there is an exception, that is the Netherlands. Why did the Japanese shogunate give the Netherlands a break when there were so many Western countries? Period. Chapter 803 Crown Prince of the Netherlands. Anyone who knows a little about Japan will know that the Netherlands plays an important role in Japanese history. The Netherlands is the most important source of Western culture introduced to Japan in the early days, which played a significant role in Japan's development. William IV and his eldest son Albert came to Sydney for a visit. In addition to attending a speech at the Sydney University School of Finance and Economics, they also took the 15-year-old Albert to visit the development of various industries in Sydney. Textile industry, metallurgy industry, heavy industry, machine tools, as well as the already booming electric lights, radio, tape recorders, etc. These household appliances have expanded their scale of production in Sydney. The entire Sydney has become the largest manufacturing base in the Netherlands and the largest industrial industry in the world. If Sydney dares to say that it is the second largest electronic product manufacturing site in the world, then no other place dares to say that it is the first. Even London, New York, and Berlin cannot do it. The two people's visit to Sydney can be said to be the support of the Dutch royal family for the Dutch Far East Group. It can also be regarded as a clear attitude of support for the advanced industries of the Netherlands. After the two finished breakfast, Prince Albert began to ask about the views on the visit of Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimichi Takubo to the Netherlands. William IV gave the above answer. He asked Albert, "Do you understand the origin of the relationship between the Netherlands and Japan?" Unexpectedly, Prince Albert did his homework slowly. Prince Albert said, "The Dutch windmills and tulips in Japan are used to commemorate the arrival of the first Dutch merchant ship de Lift in Japan in 1600. The special relationship between the Netherlands and Japan is actually due to the uniqueness of the Netherlands itself. The Netherlands was called the coachman of the sea at that time, and overseas trade was very developed, which greatly enhanced the national strength of the Netherlands. Because of this, the Netherlands is a country where mercantilism is very prevalent. In the impression of foreign countries, the Netherlands deals with foreign countries simply to make profits through trade. And what was the direct reason for Japan's isolation? It was Catholicism. In the early days, due to the intervention of Western forces, many Catholics appeared in southwestern Japan. Japan was in chaos during the Warring States period and had no time to deal with it, but once unified, the feudal shogunate would naturally regard religions that threatened the shogunate's authority and increased the centrifugal force of the southwestern region as heresy. So soon after the Edo shogunate was established, it issued a ban on religion and cracked down on Christians on a large scale. However, although we Dutch are a Western country, we have no interest in spreading religion and only want to do business. What the Dutch are excited about is Protestantism, which has a high degree of secularization. Relying on the early connections, the Netherlands adopted various means to actively and effectively improve the relationship with the shogunate, and got the shogunate's leniency. In 1637, Catholics in southwestern Japan could not bear it and launched a large-scale uprising, and the famous Shimabara Rebellion. Prince Albert said, "We Dutch immediately seized the opportunity to dispatch the navy and helped the shogunate army at the time to bombard the Catholic jealousy for 14 days. These measures made the Netherlands gain great favor from the shogunate. As a result, the shogunate finally let down its guard against its old friend the Netherlands. Then good results came. The Spanish and Portuguese, who are Catholic countries, were not interested, but they were not averse to the Dutch. The Dutch also repeatedly assured that they only wanted to trade with Japan and had no missionary intentions. Therefore, under the permission of the current shogunate, the Dutch became the only Western trading partner of the Western world and Japan from the 17th century to the end of the 18th century. William IV smiled and said, "Yes, The Netherlands gained a lot from trade, but Japan gained a lot. Prince Albert nodded and said, "So, in the exchanges with the Netherlands, Japan has learned a lot from us in the Netherlands." Early Japan called Western culture and science Dutch studies. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the Netherlands could be said to be one of the most economically prosperous and technologically advanced countries in Europe at that time. The Japanese bought and translated many books on science from the Netherlands, obtained Western treasures and crafts, and thousands of publications on Dutch studies were published and circulated among the Japanese. Although Japan is closed to the outside world, it is different from the Qing dynasty. Although Japan is closed to the outside world for the purpose of maintaining feudal rule, it is not arrogant in culture and still attaches great importance to absorbing culture from afar. William IV sighed, "Yes, this is a country that is accustomed to stealing. Japan has been stealing advanced technologies from neighboring countries since the Tang dynasty in the Far East. After hundreds of years, they have learned almost everything and started to turn waste into treasure, turning the West's forced opening of the country into an opportunity to absorb foreign advanced culture and technology. It can be said that they will seize the opportunity. Crown Prince Albert will soon be 16 years old, so he said like a little adult." In 1720, Shogun Tokugawa Yoshimune relaxed the restrictions on the introduction of foreign books and allowed the introduction of foreign books and their translation into Japanese. In 1878, Murashima Nakayoshi published Red Hair's Miscellaneous Talks, which recorded a lot of knowledge from the Netherlands, including some new things, such as microscopes, balloons, etc., discussed Western hospitals and some disease knowledge, listed painting and copperplate printing techniques, described the manufacture of generators and large ships, and related to recent geographical knowledge, etc. In 1798, Tadao Shizuki, the eighth-generation Dutch translator from Nagasaki, translated the Latin version of the physics classic, the New Book of Calendar, in 1798 after completing the first systematic analysis of Dutch grammar. He introduced Newton's mechanics in detail and caused a sensation in Japan. Japan's first electricity book in 1811 was written by Sakachi Hashimoto. The book recorded a lot of knowledge about electricity, such as the placement of power generation units, human conductivity, and Franklin's experiments on lightning in 1750. From 1804 to 1829, the shogunate and Tirakoya opened schools across Japan to further spread new Western knowledge, and Dutch envoys and scientists were allowed easier access to Japanese communities. Japan's Sakura City has held the Sakura Tulip Festival every year since then, with merchants surrounding a beautiful and colorful sea of tulips around a real Dutch windmill, which was built to commemorate the more than 200 years of historical friendship between Japan and the Netherlands that began in 1600. Prince Albert finally exclaimed, "These enlightened measures show that although Japan is closed to the outside world, it is not completely out of touch with the scientific and technological progress of the West in the 18th and early 19th centuries." After the shogunate was overthrown in 1854, although the Netherlands was suppressed by the new political form of Japan headed by the Emperor Komei, 1846–1867, and Emperor Meiji, 1867, were wary of the Netherlands and even turned to Britain, but they did not dare to completely attack the Dutch in the country. Further, the cultural dissemination of the Netherlands enabled Japan to establish a preliminary scientific foundation, which is also the main reason for Japan's rapid development and progress in the future after the Meiji Restoration. They have tasted the sweetness. Therefore, the current strength and technological strength of the Netherlands are the reasons why Japan had to bow its head this time. William IV looked at his eldest son with a smile, and lamented that 15 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and the child had grown up like this. He had a plan in his mind, and then said, "Since you know Japan so well, then when the time comes, the Japanese diplomat envoy will come, you will receive him on my behalf." Crown Prince Albert asked hesitantly, "Isn't it a bit rude?" "What do you think?" William IV, "It's good to be humble, but not too humble. You are the Crown Prince of the Netherlands. What's rude about receiving an envoy from the Emperor?" "Child, sometimes, show your pride in being the Crown Prince of the Netherlands. Then, you will find that many things can be handled in different ways and with different results due to different standpoints." Chapter 804, Germany and Austria-Hungary's Far Eastern Ambition. As the military agreement between Spain and the Netherlands will trigger a broken window effect, the cooperation between William IV and Praxedes will definitely impact the world pattern. Bismarck visited Vienna, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and met with the Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz Joseph I, and said straight to the point. Franz Joseph I nodded and said seriously, with the intensification of the Anglo-Dutch game and the opportunity for division, some British allies including Japan and France began to try to act as hubs and assume the role of power chain. Bismarck, yes, now William IV signed a defense agreement with the visiting Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes in Sydney. This has broken the pattern of the Far East to a certain extent, just like the alliance between Britain and France in the Far East. I think the Netherlands has been resentful of this for a long time. Spain has been on the side of the Netherlands and has been planning for a long time. Franz Joseph I, Britain's clear containment of the rise of the Netherlands has determined that the Far East situation will be centered on the dual strategic game between Britain and the Netherlands. However, the strategic rise space brought about by the Anglo-Dutch game has provided opportunities for other major powers such as the United States, Japan, Italy, Spain, and even the declining Qing dynasty, as well as us and the divided France, and the same is true for the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Bismarck would naturally not deny this. In fact, this is also the purpose of his coming to Vienna. Seeing this, Franz Joseph I sneered in his heart. Bismarck is a guy who likes to plan before he acts. As a rising star, the German Empire will naturally not let the current stable areas of Europe remain unchanged. However, the German Empire will naturally not be the first to come out, and its eyes are also on places outside Europe. However, despite this, the German Empire, Spain, Italy and other countries are still looking for opportunities in the Far East, and want to follow the example of Britain and France to strengthen their military presence in the Far East. In addition, although Germany concealed it well, intelligence from Austria-Hungary showed that Germany has been constantly approaching Japan recently, such as using the Qing dynasty to threaten Japan to support German products to enter the Japanese market. At the same time, it agreed that German warships would dock at Japanese ports to expand Germany's presence there. At the same time, Bismarck was cunning and implemented the same strategy on the Qing dynasty. It can be said that both sides are reading. As the Japanese ambassador to Germany said publicly, in Japan, Germany is one of the few trustworthy partners in the world. Coordination and cooperation with Germany are very important for Japan to deal with the Russian Empire and the Qing dynasty. For Austria-Hungary, Japan and France attach importance to being considered as being linked to Britain. It is easier to cooperate with Germany to avoid cooperation with Britain. At the same time, Austria-Hungary strategically emphasizes an independent and self-reliant position similar to that of the German Empire, which will show its position, unlike the current Japan and France, which are currently separated and rely on London's support. Thinking of this, Franz Joseph I said, the military agreement between Spain and the Netherlands will lead to a serious broken window effect. Britain and France are tied together. Japan seems unwilling to offend the Netherlands in one fell swoop, so it sent the foreign minister to visit Melbourne to try to explain its position and ease relations with the Netherlands. It can be seen that Japan is a country that is soft and afraid of hard. He looked up at Bismarck and said, Austria-Hungary's position is still uncertain, but Germany is wondering what to do next. Meaning, I will listen to your German plan first, and then Austria-Hungary will see if it follows up. Bismarck looked at the Austro-Hungarian emperor indifferently, with a feeling of disdain rising in his heart, but he smiled and said, our opinion is that Germany, Austria-Hungary and other extraterritorial countries have followed suit, and we have allowed other small and medium-sized countries to choose a third way between Britain and the Netherlands. Bismarck stared at Joseph I and said, from the perspective of active construction and passive acceptance, it is a win-win solution for countries other than Britain and the Netherlands. Small and medium-sized countries can freely engage in strategic dialogue and cooperation without the requirement of Britain and the Netherlands to choose sides. For the Netherlands, on the one hand, it is necessary to consider how to avoid strategic containment and suppression from Britain, and on the other hand, it is also necessary to consider how to break the squeeze on spheres of influence brought about by strategic cooperation between other major powers. As Bismarck analyzed in detail, Franz Joseph I felt a throbbing in his heart. The guy in front of him who was talking so eloquently was the protagonist who defeated Austria-Hungary and kicked Austria-Hungary out of the German Confederation more than 10 years ago. Logically, he should hate his talent, but for some reason, he was envious in his heart. Yes, he envied William I for having such a talent. Bismarck didn't know what Joseph I was thinking, so he continued, in addition, the signing of the military snowcap by the Netherlands and Spain brought more spillover effects. One of them is that Britain's clear containment of the rise of the Netherlands has determined that the situation in the Far East, including the Americas, will be centered on the Anglo-Dutch dual strategy. However, the Anglo-Dutch game, as mentioned earlier, will provide other countries, including our two countries, with a rare opportunity. Other countries will not choose to completely side with the British or Dutch camp, but to encourage British actions, such as what France is doing now, and at the same time use Britain's isolate or allies to gather together to accelerate the establishment of the middle zone space. Therefore, the future pattern of the Far East in America will be mainly characterized by the Anglo-Dutch dual game. At the same time, the participation of surrounding secondary countries such as Japan, the United States, and France in the affairs of the Far East and America will continue to increase, and the Netherlands will face the dual pressure of containment and balance pressure at the same time. Josephi, what the Prime Minister means is that our two countries can take advantage of this opportunity to break into the camps of Japan, France, and the United States, and then cut meat from Britain and the Netherlands. Bismarck nodded and said, the major powers other than Britain and the Netherlands form a third force. Britain is large and powerful, so if we form a third force, it will have a certain squeezing effect on the smaller Netherlands. For decades, Britain has been relying on its own warships to support the expansion of its colonies in the Far East and America, making it the largest country in the world. Even the Sand River Empire cannot compare. Unfortunately, after the Netherlands claimed the Australian continent and New Zealand, Britain has lost 1/3 of its colonies, leaving only the Indian Peninsula and Canada. As for those large areas in Africa, the Netherlands also has colonies of similar size. This also led to the Netherlands owning Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, Congo, Kenya and other beloved territories in North Africa. Together with the Alaska Peninsula and the Dutch East Indies, it actually surpassed the Qing dynasty and became the third largest country in the world in terms of area. It cultivated a tiger that threatened itself. Britain relied on itself in the Far East, while the Dutch alliances in the Far East and America were connected through a radial model. As the Anglo-Dutch Tar intensified and the confrontation between the two courts brought about, some of the Anglo-Dutch allies, including Germany, Austria-Hungary, Spain, Japan, France, and the United States, began to try to act as hubs and take on the leading role of the power center, trying to change the current secondary or subordinate roles. Quotation mark. Chapter 805, Is Berlin ein Kalimantan? Spain is determined to sign an access agreement with the Netherlands in the Far East. This is the first such transaction between Spain and a country outside the Nordic alliance. It is a clear signal that Spain is breaking free from the constraints of powerful countries such as Britain, France and Germany in Europe and marching into the Far East. For both countries, the agreement means that the two countries have entered the substantive stage of military strategic autonomy and strategic hedging against Britain. Bismarck, who has always been known as the iron-blooded prime minister in the German Empire, could not help but excitedly paint a big picture for the Austro-Hungarian Empire Josephi, while supporting Britain and the Netherlands, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Japan, France, the United States and other major powers all have their own interests. The Netherlands-South American alliance will inevitably respond to any aggressive actions by Britain, or prevent today's America from becoming tomorrow's Britain. Britain will also form cliques to deal with the alliance formed by the Netherlands, so our neighboring countries will inevitably become the targets of competition between the Netherlands and Britain in the future. Then, each of our countries will be able to use this to achieve our goals. For the Netherlands, although third country cooperation is not conducive to the Netherlands' leadership in various organizations, it can solve the dilemma of allies or choosing sides and prevent allies or partners from joining the British camp. As for Britain, the expansion of the Netherlands' circle of allies is even more disadvantageous to Britain. Therefore, supporting our other countries will have a small offset to the expansion of the Netherlands' circle of allies. At the same time, by encouraging us, the Netherlands' network of allies can be divided, which is very beneficial to Britain. Looking at Bismarck speaking slowly, the words that came out of his mouth were vigorous and powerful. He was indeed worthy of being the prime minister who used the attack on Schleswig and Holstein to make Austria, which he ruled, embarrassed. He calculated too clearly. Franz Josephi, I don't know what the German Empire wants to gain in the Far East. And what benefits can the Austro-Hungarian Empire get? Bismarck understood that if the German Empire wanted to gain huge benefits in the Far East, it would be difficult to do it alone. After all, the German Empire had a small presence in the Far East, and even the strength of its maritime deployment was far less than that of the maritime powers such as Britain, the Netherlands, France and Spain. Even Denmark, Portugal, Italy, and Austria-Hungary were not much different. Therefore, it would be best for the German Empire, whose navy was currently weak, to bring Austria-Hungary with it. This was also the purpose of his visit to Vienna this time. Spain was originally better, but now Spain has allied with the Netherlands, which made Bismarck feel sorry. Denmark was not bad either, but the invasion war that year made Denmark wary of Germany. Austria-Hungary was more like an inland country than Germany. It had a Mediterranean fleet, which could be said to complement the German Empire's Atlantic Fleet and the Pineapple Sea Fleet, forming a fleet that has always had a presence in Europe, which could greatly increase the image of the German Empire. Moreover, Franz Joseph I was ambitious, and Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm I both believed that this trip to Vienna had a high chance of success. Sure enough, everything was determined by conditions. Bismarck thought of this and felt relieved. He picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. After putting it down, he smiled faintly and said, "I heard that Her Majesty the Queen in London is in a hurry recently. When people are in a hurry because of something, they will forget the importance of things that they usually pay more attention to." I agree with this view. He looked at Joseph I, who was indifferent. It was obvious that he was willing to see you playing tricks. Bismarck smiled bitterly in his heart and said half-truthfully, "If the Austro-Hungarian Empire agrees, I think Britain will know how to give up some things." Franz Joseph I's face changed drastically. "You are not going to stand on the side of Britain, are you?" Bismarck shook his head. "Of course not. We are landing at a high altitude in the Far East. No matter where we land, we will play a key role in the situation there. Britain knows it, and the Netherlands knows it too. Your Majesty, if it comes to this time, do these two countries still need us to take the initiative to stand on the side?" Well, Joseph I had to say that Bismarck's guess should be correct. After Britain and the Netherlands are in a fight, Germany and Austria can indeed blackmail them. However, Joseph I asked unhappily, "The Prime Minister hasn't said it yet, where do you have your eyes on? Now Britain is in the north of Kalimantan, and the Netherlands is also in Kalimantan. Your Majesty, you said that in exchange for the addition of the Alaska Peninsula, the Netherlands gave its own North Kalimantan province to allow the British and Russian territories to border each other. And it gave West Kalimantan province to Britain in exchange for an Australia to the Netherlands. The Netherlands currently controls Central Kalimantan province in the south of Kalimantan Island, East Kalimantan province in the southeast, and Antarctic Kalimantan province. I think that if we ask for some port territories from Britain and the Netherlands in Kalimantan province, Their Majesties Queen Victoria and William IV should not object, right?" Franz Joseph I heard this, his brows relaxed, a smile appeared on his face, and he said, "I think your guess is right. They are not petty people. They will understand our efforts to maintain world peace." After saying this, both of them smiled knowingly. So far, the cooperation between Germany and Austria has been decided. What will Britain and the Netherlands do next in the face of the ambitions of these two countries? Will they really get what they want? The father and son of William IV mentioned by these two people are being entertained in Sydney by the home of Herman van Perron, the president of Sydney University. "Prince Albert, teacher, you have published fewer and fewer articles in major newspapers recently. Not only the whole Netherlands, but also the whole of Europe, miss the political views and current affairs articles you published weekly in the European Times." Those spicy and hot comments made readers applaud. Since you became the president of Sydney University a few years ago, the newspaper industry has lost a great voice of awakening the world. Herman van Perron glanced at William IV obscurely, and then said unnaturally, "The water of the Rhine River has always been the back waves pushing the front waves. If I am missing, there are thousands of me behind. Your Highness, be careful not to provoke my former colleagues to spit all over the world and ruin the reputation I have worked so hard to accumulate." William IV glared at him, and the latter shrank his head. This old guy, he is 60 years old, and his speech is still so floating, but Albert is not wrong. If he had not called Van Perron back to Sydney University as the president, he might still be the world's most authoritative newspaper current affairs commentator. Instead of the president of Sydney University, which ranks second only to Cambridge University in the current world university rankings. Herman van Perron met William IV's half-smile, he coughed, and then said seriously, "Of course, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's starting point is good, but the times are different now. In the past, Viscount Palmerston was all-powerful in Britain, and even Queen Victoria gave him some respect. Germany rose, but Bismarck was still immature. So I was able to gain some fame. America also stood on our side, and the Netherlands' allies were famous all over the world. Look at it now, the world has changed, and all countries need a voice that is beneficial to their rule. So, Your Majesty asked me to come back to teach and educate people, and I think it is the wisest thing. Chapter 806, The New Structure of the Four Major Forces. In terms of trade alliances, a global industrial chain with the Netherlands as the core, excluding the United Kingdom, will be established mainly based on the Nordic Alliance, the South American Alliance and the Pacific Partnership. In particular, through free trade zone negotiations on raw materials and markets such as the Qing dynasty, Hungria, and the Kingdom of Siam, the Netherlands' import and export tax rates with these countries will be reduced, which will significantly increase the Netherlands' Far East trade. And promoting these countries to increase trade with Sweden, Spain, Germany and other countries, their demands to replace Britain as the industrial node of global core technology also greatly accelerated the advancement of the trade alliance with the Netherlands as the core. In terms of the Maritime Dutch Alliance, as Mexico and the Central American Federation successively joined the South American Alliance Military Agreement Center, Spain directly expressed its support for us in the Far East, and even the Russian Empire applied to join the Nordic Alliance, and jointly formed its global Dutch alliance system around the Eurasian Continental Branch and the American Continental Branch of Britain and France. In terms of military alliances, the Netherlands and Spain, together with the Kingdom of Siam, established a Western Pacific Alliance composed of the Netherlands, Spain and Siam, which effectively dealt with the original siege of the Kingdom of Siam and the southern Dutch East Indies, later Indonesia Nepal, by Britain and France using North and South Vietnam plus Malay Peninsula plus the Western Peninsula of Southeast Asia, Myanmar and Bengal, which instead divided the power of Britain and France. In short, the alliance established by Britain and France, in the face of the military agreement of the alliance between the Netherlands and Spain, and the strengthening of the military relations between the Netherlands and the Kingdom of Siam, all show that the axis of the Far East Alliance and Trade Alliance has emerged. This is the Netherlands transplanting it to the Far East after the Nordic Alliance and the South American Alliance. The Dutch plus Spanish military agreement signed by William IV and Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes in Sydney, the significant new housing agreement, and the reciprocal access agreement are regarded as the most important agreement between Spain and the Netherlands in more than a decade, and even the most important treaty signed by the Netherlands and Spain 232 years after the Treaty of Westphalia parted ways. It turned out that the Netherlands successively came under the rule of the Austrian Habsburg dynasty and the Seebach Habsburg dynasty in 1648. In 1568, the Dutch independence war against Spanish rule broke out. In 1581, the United Provinces of the Netherlands was established. The province of Holland was the largest, richest and most powerful province in the United Provinces of the Netherlands, so the country used the name of Holland. After years of struggle, Spain officially recognized the independence of the Netherlands after the successful signing of the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. Considered the most important agreement between Spain and the Netherlands in more than 2 centuries, it allows the two countries to plan and develop larger and more complex military exercises and deploy troops to each other's territory. Spain became the first European country to sign such an agreement with the Netherlands, and Spain also has a similar agreement with Portugal. As a country with the top 3 strength in the world's navy competing with France, the top 11 are Britain, the Netherlands, France, Spain, Germany, the United States, Austria-Hungary, Italy, Portugal and Qing dynasty share the 10th place. Denmark. Spain's deep involvement in the Far East will trigger a serious broken window effect. For regional powers, strategic autonomy and alliances can increase bargaining chips against Britain and demand more sharing of interests and division of spheres of influence. For the Netherlands, the cooperation of third countries can alleviate the possible allies of the Anglo-French alliance to a certain extent. Other powerful potential opponents such as the German Empire have direct containment pressure on the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. However, if the Netherlands or the United Kingdom does not handle these countries' balancing pressure well, it is easy to turn into containment pressure on the Netherlands or the United Kingdom. The Far East has gradually become a secondary center of global games second only to Europe. Participation in it is also an important way for other major powers to improve their status. However, fear of the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, as well as concerns about their own strength, have led these countries to hesitate and be cautious. For example, The United States has always had a great interest in the Pacific, but its Western Pacific strategy has been kept secret until the administration of American President Stephen Douglas came to power in 1879. As Spain boldly promotes cooperation with these countries, especially military cooperation, the density and intensity of cooperation continue to increase, and the global status of Britain is improved. Other countries are bound to be unwilling to lag behind and take radical and bold measures, especially in the military. In addition, William IV could foresee that Japan was cooperating with Britain to deal with the Qing dynasty. Japan did set its sights on the territory of the Qing dynasty, but Britain was eyeing the huge monster that Britain feared after Japan set foot on the northern territory of the Qing dynasty, the Russian Empire. Perhaps the whole world was staring at Britain and the Netherlands, but William IV, who was familiar with world history, knew that Queen Victoria, who was good at playing the long game and fishing for big fish, put the bait in the northeast and Korea, and Japan and Russia would eventually take the bait. Russia was defeated by Japan supported by Britain, and Britain benefited from it. Japan called itself a younger brother in front of Britain and dominated the southern Far East. This was the original history. So in the past few years, watching Britain and Japan get closer, she knew that the wheel of history had not changed. The two countries were still hooked up, which marked that Japan had obtained the origin of the world's most advanced navigation technology, and for the first time outside the Netherlands and the United States, it started a major industrial defense cooperation and purchased the most advanced warships. Therefore, William IV's response is to actively recommend the hub-and-spoke alliance leadership system led by the Netherlands in the Far East, and turn to the core modular cooperation system led by the Netherlands and Spain. This is the opposite of the declining America in the previous life. In addition, William IV found that European and American countries are deploying in the Far East. Now, in addition to the British, French, PK, Dutch, Spanish, there are multiple routes of Germany, Austria, Tsarist Russia, the United States, Italy, Portugal and Brazil. It can be said that the world is truly experiencing the development of multipolitics. The hub-and-spoke alliance system led by the Netherlands has turned to a modular cooperation model jointly led by allies. First of all, this military agreement between the Netherlands and Spain reflects several major changes in the global political and military landscape. The deepening of the military cooperation between the Netherlands and Spain means that Spain may eventually join the South American Alliance military trade group of the Netherlands. At the same time, France follows Britain and may form the English Channel Alliance, which is absolutely a huge threat to neighboring countries, which in turn forces the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire to join, and countries such as Italy and Portugal are either neutral or choose sides. Or form your own team, such as the fourth echelon formed by Italy, Portugal, Brazil and the American alliance mentioned earlier. The Russian Empire, which had always survived as a lone wolf, naturally retreated to the north and waited for the opportunity. In short, William IV knew that with Spain's clear stance, a new world pattern had emerged. The future world must be very exciting. Chapter 807 Military Procurement Boom. Facts have proved that Europe has never been truly peaceful. More than 100 years have passed since the British-Spanish Naval War, and Spain has never given up any opportunity to surpass Britain again. Similarly, Britain will not allow any country to surpass it. Just like it treats the Netherlands now, Britain will not be soft-hearted to any potential opponent. According to the European Times on August 25, 1880, affected by the Anglo-Dutch conflict, all countries are stepping up their arms procurement efforts. Europe, North and South America, the Far East and other regions with severe security environments are actively introducing new weapons, especially the old European powers such as Britain and France have limited weapons supply, and emerging powers such as the Netherlands, Germany and the United States are beginning to rise. According to reports, many countries are stepping up their efforts to introduce weapons from the Netherlands, and the Russian Empire, which is at odds with Britain, continues to order submarines and warships from the Netherlands, which are deployed in the Baltic Sea and the Far East port of Vladivostok. The large-scale ordering of naval forces by Tsarist Russia, in turn, led Sweden and Denmark to decide to purchase more than 10 submarines and multiple warships from the Netherlands at a price of more than £10 million. Greece signed a contract with the United Nations to purchase more than 50 rifled gun systems, and the Netherlands also helped Greece build several docks that can accommodate submarines. The Kingdom of Siam signed a military purchase of more than £20 million with the Netherlands in the past year, and the next 3 years will be a period of intensive delivery by the Netherlands. The Netherlands' allies in South America have also signed a 10% discount military purchase plan with the Netherlands. In short, the Netherlands' arms business accounted for more than 60% of the global foreign military purchase amount in the past year, while the UK only had a 20% global share. According to reports, Spain has just introduced a military airship project of the Netherlands Air Overlord from the Netherlands based on the National Security Strategy and the National Defence Mutual Assistance Agreement just signed with the Netherlands. The number of airships is even as detailed as 10. With a training plan helped by the Netherlands, the military mutual assistance projects of the two countries will open a breakthrough. The report pointed out that the reason why countries group purchase Dutch weapons is mainly because it is necessary to strengthen their own security forces. Moreover, when countries deal with international situations, many times their positions are in the same direction. The Russian Empire purchased weapons from the Netherlands mainly because it had never given up its ambition to expand. It currently supports Serbia's pan-Slavic movement in the Balkans, so many of the Dutch weapons are used as reserves. The South American allies are naturally because of the rise of Argentina and Brazil, which makes other countries feel insecure. Therefore, the emergence of the Netherlands made these allies very happy. The Netherlands proposed to ask allies to buy weapons and strengthen their national defense capabilities, which was naturally happy for them. After all, they were originally suspicious of the Netherlands, but the Netherlands allowed each country to have its own national defense capabilities, which made each country feel a lot more at ease, so they responded to the call of the Netherlands and increased their weapons purchases. However, what they didn't know was that this was exactly the purpose of William IV. After getting used to using Dutch weapons, these countries would tend to purchase defense weapons from the Netherlands in the future. At the same time, the cost of repairing weapon parts would be huge, plus training, etc., all of which were Dutch weapons. Even if these countries fell out with the Netherlands in the future, they would not be able to do without Dutch weapons within 10 or even 20 years, and the influence of the Netherlands would be difficult to eliminate. This was the trap that William IV set for them. According to reports, as a weapons supplier, the Dutch defense industry began to increase production. According to the Australian Times, the Dutch arms giant East India Arms Group has started a 7-day, 24-hour continuous production mode in the Americas. The orders for the sale of surface ships have exceeded 50 ships, the orders for rifled guns have exceeded 1,000 guns, and the ammunition for semi-automatic rifles has exceeded 200,000. The weapons department of the Dutch Far East Group, the rival of the Dutch East India Arms Group, is also working overtime day and night to rush the orders. It is said that the foreign trade orders for submarines of this second-largest arms company in the Netherlands have exceeded 38, and the delivery period is in the next 2 years. The order for airships is also one of the company's largest income. The weapons company of the Dutch United Group is also increasing the supply of gunpowder. Since the third-largest capital group giant in the Netherlands joined the Swedish Nobel family gunpowder company, yes, the founder of the future Nobel Prize, to form the Dutch-Swedish Joint Arms Company, all the patents of the latter have become the stepping stone for the third-largest company in the Netherlands to enter the world's weapons industry. Now more than one-third of the world's gunpowder is provided by this joint company. The union of the Dutch Union Group and the Swedish Nobel Family Gunpowder Company broke the precedent of transnational union of large enterprises in the world, which attracted the world's attention at that time. Subsequently, the joint company formed the Dutch Union Nobel Brothers Oil Company and began to enter the oil industry. It is reported that before the Netherlands and Britain fell out, Britain was the world's second-largest arms exporter after the Netherlands. After 1868, Britain's arms exports were surpassed by the Netherlands. In the past 12 years, the gap in arms exports between the two countries has become increasingly larger, and the amount is even only one-third of the current amount of the Netherlands. In addition, the number of weapons and the range of countries sold are far from the Netherlands' opponents. The long-term conflict between Britain and the Netherlands ban on Britain, and the concerns of European countries about Britain have restricted Britain's export targets. Britain also had no spare energy to produce weapons for export because of the previous confrontation with the Balkans, the Americas, and the Netherlands. It was not until 1872 that it recovered, but it was too late at that time. The market share was occupied by the Netherlands. The main export weapons of this visa are surface ships and rifles, and there are also many artillery such as rifled cannons. Now they have been replaced by the Netherlands' more advanced ironclad ships, semi-automatic rifles, rifled cannons, etc. This is also one of the factors that led countries to begin to adjust and remain neutral in the Anglo-Dutch conflict. In addition, the German Empire's army weapons and equipment, and France's navy and army equipment are all world-class. The United States' technology may be inferior to theirs, but fortunately it is inexpensive and of good quality, and both the navy and the army have them, so it has won the favor of many countries, such as poor countries with relatively low budgets. Especially submarines. The quality of American-made submarines is second only to the Netherlands, and they are in the second generation of submarines with Britain and Germany. You must know that the second generation of submarines has a range of 200 nautical miles, while the early first generation has a range of 50 nautical miles. As for the most advanced third-generation submarines, only the Netherlands has them at present. The third-generation submarines exceed 500 nautical miles, and it is said that the mysterious third-generation submarines of the Netherlands also have a weapons system that launches multiple torpedoes, which is said to be able to concentrate on penetrating the bottom of an ironclad warship, which is very mysterious. In short, with the rise of the arms purchase boom, everyone understands one thing, that is, the expansion of the scale of arms trade reflects the escalation of global tensions. Chapter 808. The glory of the German Empire is coming. As the news of the arms purchase was published in the European Times, newspapers in other countries reprinted it. Now, all countries have begun to keep a close eye on the weapons of the Netherlands. It must be said that the Netherlands' approach is really brilliant. Sometimes I have to admire William IV. He can always use all kinds of unconventional ideas to do things that make people applaud. Bismarck, who had just returned to Berlin from Vienna, was being received by German Emperor William I at the Berlin Palace. Just after reporting on his work, William I handed the newspaper to Bismarck and talked about this matter. Bismarck: Britain lost from the beginning. Queen Victoria was calculated by the Netherlands. William I stared at him, waiting for his explanation. Bismarck: among Britain's allies in 1868, only Belgium was loyal. Of course, Saxe-Coburg and the Kingdom of Hanover, which were just occupied by Prussia, were also Britain's allies on the European continent. However, after 1867, they became small principalities under us. As for the other seemingly alienated kingdoms of Portugal and Italy, just look at them now. On the contrary, the Netherlands has its staunch allies Denmark and Sweden in Northern Europe. In South America, it had 5 South American allies at the time. Argentina and the United States, which are now at odds, are also export markets for the Netherlands' weapons. One has no fixed market, the other is spread all over the world, and its allies are stable. In such weapons transactions, the Netherlands naturally has an advantage over Britain when the quality is not inferior to that of Britain. William I, the current diplomacy of Isabella II plus Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes is more radical than that of Isabella II plus Ramon Narvaez. The route taken is further and the path of military reorganization is clearer. This visit of Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes to Sydney and the summit with King William IV of the Netherlands can be said to be the climax of his alliance journey after he came to power, and it is also the biggest diplomatic change in Spain since the end of the Napoleonic Wars in more than 60 years. Bismarck said seriously, "Yes, when I was in Vienna, I was also shocked by this with His Majesty Emperor Joseph I of Austria. No one expected that Spain would make so much determination to participate in the conflict between the Netherlands and Britain." From the time in Madrid before the visit to Sydney, Praxedes kept repeating a theme to the Parliament and the Prime Minister's office: Yuan Nong Dong's attempt to unilaterally change the status quo is getting more and more intense, and the security environment is becoming increasingly tense. Without naming Britain and France, they are relying on their military advantage to besiege the Kingdom of Siam in Southeast Asia, forcing the Netherlands to issue a warning. Thus showing that Spain has great interest in cooperating with the Netherlands in the military field. Bismarck followed. The Dutch East Indies and the Spanish Philippines are also interested in launching a joint cruise project in the surrounding waters of the Bangkok Bay area outside the Kingdom of Siam. The military offensives of Britain and France in the region have aroused the vigilance of countries such as Spain and the Netherlands, and have also intensified the ambitions of these countries in the region, further exacerbating the game among these countries. During the visit of the Spanish Prime Minister, the Netherlands signed the Reciprocal Access Agreement to significantly expand the defense cooperation between the two countries, allowing both sides to station troops in each other's territory. It was the victory of the Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes, because relying on the Netherlands, Spain's project of migrating some Spaniards to the Far East has made Spain a great power spanning the Far East and Europe. It is very important. Having the Philippines, which has a better surrounding security environment than Spain, is definitely a blessing for Spain. And this agreement with the Netherlands is not only about migrating safely after getting the support of the Netherlands, but more importantly, William I asked at the right time, what's more important? Bismarck, more importantly, Spain has been recognized by the Netherlands. William I. Bismarck smiled bitterly in his heart. William I is now 81 years old. He is old and his energy is still not as good as before. This made Bismarck more determined to train little William. Time is running out. Bismarck, the Netherlands is the unspoken overlord of the Pacific. The presence of Spain, a maritime power, shows that the Netherlands is willing to share the hegemony of the Pacific with Spain, or at least, partial hegemony of the Western Pacific. William I. So, the Netherlands can't hold on any longer. Bismarck was stunned and asked, "What does your Majesty mean?" William I. Otherwise, with the strength of the Netherlands, it will generally not spit out what it has eaten. In the past, the dominance of the Nordic alliance was partially ceded to Spain. The Netherlands' strength in Europe was greatly reduced, making the Netherlands a first-class player in Europe, second only to Britain, France, Germany and Russia, and not even much lower than Austria-Hungary in Europe. However, after that, its influence in Europe was even lower than the Ottoman Empire, and was similar to Italy and Spain. This time in the Western Pacific and the Far East, if it gives up part of its power like Northern Europe, will the Netherlands repeat the influence of Northern Europe? William I said excitedly with sharp eyes, "If Spain can do it, why can't we? My Prime Minister, I think it's time to show our presence to the Netherlands and Britain. Otherwise, after Spain has established its foothold, it will be difficult for us to find a place to stay when there are too many people and too little food there." Bismarck's mind moved slightly. William I's meaning was very clear, that is, he was saying that the German Empire should show its claws in front of the world. If we don't take advantage of the troubled waters in the Far East at this time, it will be too late when everything settles down, and we will get nothing. But Your Majesty, if we wade into this muddy water too quickly now, our value will drop a lot when the power of Britain and the Netherlands has not been reduced, which is quite different from our original plan. Bismarck was really reluctant to participate in the Anglo-Dutch conflict at this time, because the benefits he could gain were too little, which was too different from his idea. What he didn't know was that in William IV's previous life, he calculated too much. In the end, although the German Empire rose to a position second only to Britain, the surrounding areas of the German Empire had long been calculated by Britain. The German Empire was surrounded by enemies, and Bismarck came to a tragic end not long after William I came to power. After his death, Britain and other countries pounced on the German Empire like hungry wolves. This great power that had risen for 100 years collapsed overnight. But the two people in front of him didn't know. William I was old and wise, and he couldn't see Bismarck's reluctance. In the past, he would not refute Bismarck, but today he was a little abnormal and serious. Spain's participation is an earthquake for Europe, and, my Prime Minister, you may not know yet, the big bear in our north is already preparing for arms. Alexander I has decided to build a Siberian railway to connect the Far East, and on the Pacific coast of the Far East, the Pacific Fleet and the Army are also changing frequently. Hearing this, Bismarck took the intelligence from William I and looked at it, with a look of surprise on his face. Bismarck, is Alexander I helping the Netherlands? William I, who knows? Anyway, we really have to show our faces. Bismarck looked at the intelligence and finally compromised. It seems that this is the only way. Far East? Germany is coming. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 809 European Intervention. British Empire, House of Commons. Today Queen Victoria was invited to attend the parliamentary meeting. On the stage, the person who was giving the keynote speech was British Prime Minister Claystone from the Whig Party. And there was a man standing below the stage, whose momentum was no less than that of Claystone on the stage. This was Disraeli, a British MP and leader of the Tory party. Disraeli stood up and asked a question, pointing to the inadequacy of Claystone's government's foreign policy management. The Netherlands and Spain signed a reciprocal access agreement that greatly expanded the defense cooperation between the two countries, allowing both sides to station troops in each other's territory. This is a major diplomatic achievement of Spain. Like this Spanish king, William IV described the Netherlands and Spain as a model of world relations. Now public opinion believes that the Reciprocal Access Agreement is the most important military and political agreement between the Netherlands and Spain in more than 2 centuries after 1648. At that time, because the Netherlands broke away from the rule of Spain, the Spanish maritime power was sharply weakened. In the last few decades, Britain, defeated the Netherlands first and then cleaned up Spain. At that time, Britain relied on alienating the Netherlands and leaving Spain, and finally succeeded in taking power. And may I ask our Prime Minister Clayton, the reunion of the Netherlands and Spain, is this a bad omen? Will it be a fateful reincarnation that will make Britain step down from the world hegemony again? Hearing this, the British Crown Prince Edward on the side changed his face. Not only him, the entire Parliament was buzzing and in chaos. And Queen Victoria, who had been very calm from beginning to end, also showed her emotion for the first time. The theory of fate makes it difficult for people to directly point out that they don't believe it. In Europe, where religion is believed, religion is something that follows you from birth to death. Therefore, when Disraeli threw this question to Clayton's difficulties can be imagined. Queen Victoria stared at Disraeli with some dissatisfaction. This old guy seems to have been too idle recently and wants to make trouble again. Queen Victoria even thought about whether to send this guy to South Africa, or the colonies in Egypt, to spend some time in those deserts that are too warm to wake up his mind. Prime Minister Clayton on the stage looked at Disraeli with some doubts, but fortunately, he was of high quality and his reaction was naturally not slow. The two had fought for many years, and naturally when Disraeli stood up, he had already expected that he would encounter difficulties. However, it was one thing for him to expect it, but the trouble in front of all the MPs still made Clayton pay attention to solve the difficulties. This is the necessary adaptability skills for politicians in the struggle between the two parties in Britain. Yes, Disraeli is right. Britain instigated the Netherlands to separate from Spain and supported the Netherlands in confronting Spain. Finally, in 1848, Spain had to give in. Britain and the Netherlands cooperated to deal with the threat from Spain. Disraeli, Your Excellency the Prime Minister understands. In order to deal with the threat from Britain, these two countries are now targeting Britain. The signing of the agreement means that once Britain goes to war with one of the countries, the other country will be able to intervene militarily. I wonder if the Prime Minister knows that the Netherlands and other European countries, such as Sweden and Denmark, have such an agreement. Faced with these signatories of the agreement, is Britain ready to fight so many countries at the same time? There are 4 international navies going to war with Britain in the northern Atlantic at the same time. Can Britain, the hegemonic country at sea, still hold on? If it can't be settled, does Prime Minister Clayton have a solution? If there is no solution, the Prime Minister is gradually launching a plan to contain the Netherlands in the Far East with Britain, France and Japan. Is it a temporary change? However, now the Netherlands has signed a military agreement with Spain. Oh, I forgot, Japan has now sent Foreign Minister-level Takubeo Liden to Melbourne to pay homage to the Netherlands. Everyone present should know about this, right? Obviously, the Pacific partners we have been supporting are a little scared and dare not face the Netherlands directly. Is it the second bad news for Prime Minister Clayton's plan to surrender to the Netherlands at this time? How will this be resolved? Finally, as the opposition party outside the British government, the Tories will be at home next, supervising and being prepared to impeach the Whig government for diplomatic losses. Just when everyone breathed a sigh of relief and thought Disraeli had finished speaking, he suddenly broke the news. Just now, the Austro-Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has announced that it will increase its troops in southwestern Mexico to 30,000 soldiers. But at the same time, Austria-Hungary publicly softened its willingness to negotiate with Mexico under the mediation of the Netherlands. Disraeli looked at Claxton, whose face changed greatly on the stage, and asked solemnly, "Excuse me, Austria-Hungary sent such a signal at this time. I think everyone here knows what it means. Our great Prime Minister, how should the cabinet government respond?" At the same time, the secretaries of Queen Victoria and Claxton came in urgently, and then whispered to each other under the close gaze of everyone. Everyone noticed that the two people's faces suddenly became solemn. Both of them received the news from Austria-Hungary and Disraeli, but the difference was that just now, the German Foreign Ministry announced in Berlin that the German ambassador to the Netherlands met with the Dutch Foreign Ministry's Joseph Beit. According to the news received in Berlin, the German Empire will send a small fleet to participate in the naval exercise hosted by the Netherlands. The exercise will be held in the southern waters of Kalimantan Island, in the Dutch East Indies, for a week. At the same time, the German Foreign Ministry also announced that after the completion of the exercise between the two countries, they will meet at the port of Davao on Mindanao Island in the southern part of the Spanish colony of the Philippines, and cooperate with the Spanish Navy and the Austro-Hungarian Navy stationed there to conduct regular naval exercises. The goal of the four-nation exercise is to maintain security and stability in the Pacific. Looking at the audience, he looked at Claxton. After getting Queen Victoria's permission, Claxton gritted his teeth and had to make the news public. Suddenly, the British House of Commons was stunned. If Spain joined the Dutch camp and let the world know that the wind was blowing against Britain, then Austria-Hungary and Germany could get close to the Netherlands, which made the world stunned. Especially in France, Paris was occupied by the German Empire in 1870. If William I and Bismarck had not given in to the international public opinion led by Britain, Russia, Austria-Hungary and other countries, Paris would still be under the iron hoof of the German Empire. Therefore, in France, there is really a fear of Germany now, not to mention that Berlin is also with Austria-Hungary this time. It would be strange if France is not in chaos. It is said that the royal family of Napoleon III is a little messy now. Chapter 810 The Unexpected Siberian Railway. 1880, the British Foreign Office expressed dissatisfaction with the signing of the Reciprocal Access Agreement between Spain and the Netherlands. Britain directly pointed out, "We regard this move by Spain as openly standing against Britain. We reserve the right to retaliate against Spain's actions against Russia." At the same time, the Emperor of the French Empire, Napoleon III, directly expressed his dissatisfaction in Paris, saying that Paris would not allow its southern neighbor Spain and northern neighbor Netherlands to turn a blind eye to the threat to France. "We have more than 100,000 troops in South Vietnam and North Vietnam in the Far East. We have promoted economic development there, developed roads there, expanded the seaport there, and even brought many jobs to the local area. Of course, we now have more than 300,000 French people living there. In order to safeguard the rights and interests of France, we will not hesitate to confront any opponent that undermines our interests, even if it means starting a war." However, Napoleon II's firm will soon die down because his old rival Bismarck directly stated in Berlin shortly after he issued the declaration in Paris, "The diplomatic tendency of the German Empire is to be independent and self-reliant. We have never bowed to any country, even in the Prussian period. Therefore, we should just listen to Napoleon II's words. The Germans don't need to take it to heart. On the contrary, we should support the actions of our brother Emperor Joseph I of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We, the German Empire, support Austria-Hungary's proposal to negotiate with Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula, and are willing to work with the Netherlands as a mediator to resolve the years of conflict between Austria-Hungary and Mexico." With Bismarck's toughness, Napoleon III, who was still majestic before, was silent the next day, but the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs once again stated in a low-key manner that France would not give up its due rights and interests. All the French who saw this scene were very angry. But what's the use of being angry? France is currently in a state of division. The Second French Empire, where Napoleon III is located, occupies the north of France and overseas colonies, while the south of France is led by Thiers, the president of the Third French Republic, who has close relations with Germany, and the Third Republic is also an ally of the German Empire. Facing such a dismembered France with its strength it would be strange if Napoleon III could be tough. So the joining of Germany and Austria put Britain and France in a disadvantageous position. The balance seems to be moving in a direction that is favorable to the Netherlands. But is it really so? On September 3, 1880, as soon as a piece of news was exposed, the world immediately shifted its attention from the English Channel to the Tsarist Russian Empire in Northeast Europe, or more directly, Siberia. It turned out that Alexander II of the Tsarist Russian Empire actually announced directly in St. Petersburg that he would forcibly recruit 500,000 Tsarist Russians to build railways in Siberia, and the railway would be completed within 10 years. Once the news came out, it triggered speculation among European governments. People were even more vocal about it. In Buckingham Palace in London, Queen Victoria received mixed opinions. Disraeli, leader of the opposition Tory party, directly stated that the Russian Empire's actions should be stopped. He pointed out, Siberia connects Europe and the Far East. The Russian Empire is ambitious and wants to expand its territory in the Far East. No, this action of the Russian Empire must be stopped. Otherwise, if the Russian Empire opens up the situation, then our current strategy of besieging the Russian Empire's navy in the Baltic Sea and going out to the ocean will become useless. However, Claxton said that he should remain non-supportive and non-opposed. The situation in Europe is now in chaos. We don't have much energy to focus on Northern Europe. If the Russian Empire focuses on the Far East at this time, and there is no longer the same as our original plan, the Far East is not in our hands, but has been given to the Netherlands to become the overlord. The Russian Empire built this railway very well and the timing was very accurate. I think Alexander II and Prime Minister Gartrakov saw our powerlessness during this period and the fact that the Netherlands did not dare to offend them, and took the opportunity to enter the Far East directly. What a good trick. Clayton looked up at Queen Victoria and the others, and sighed. The Russian Empire saw that Sweden and Denmark were united in defending their positions in the face of the great powers in Europe, and they also formed an alliance with Spain and the Netherlands. The Russian Empire's use of troops against Sweden was already a loss of 800, and the possible use of troops by Spain and the Netherlands was not worth the loss. Moreover, Germany and Austria-Hungary were eyeing them covetously. The timing of the Russian Empire's use of troops was not right for them, so they always focused on the south of the Balkan Peninsula. It was right for both parties to focus on preventing the Russian Empire from going south. We also took the opportunity to increase our influence on the Balkan Peninsula. Now Germany and Austria-Hungary are also taking advantage of the conflict between us and the Netherlands to start making small moves. Your Majesty, if my guess is correct, Bismarck will soon ask us for something with his intelligence. After watching the show for a while, Crown Prince Edward asked anxiously, "You mean, the German Empire is not fully committed to the Netherlands, but instead maximizes its own value, allowing Britain to understand the value of the two German countries, and then wait for the price to sell? No way, no." Claxton sneered. "I have studied Bismarck for a long time, and found that every time he makes a big move, it will never fail, and he will never give up until he gets what he wants. When he calculated that the Austrian Empire participated in Schleswig-Holstein and weakened the defense of Austria-Hungary, he brazenly invaded Austria, causing Austria to request an armistice in just 7 weeks, and finally forced to withdraw from the German Confederation. It can be said that he shocked the world in one fell swoop and made Bismarck famous. After that, in the war with Napoleon III of France in 1870, he directly set foot in Paris and made William I the emperor in Paris. Germany has been low-key in the past few years, but everyone knows that they are integrating and absorbing all the gains of these years, and now they have almost digested it, just like a snake that has swallowed a mouse, and began to look down on the world with cold-blooded eyes and stare at the next target. At this point, he said calmly, "Looking at the current situation, it is not favorable for us. However, in front of Austria-Hungary and Germany, which are not easy to deal with, I don't think the Dutch government will be at ease with Germany and Austria-Hungary getting closer. At this moment, I think Melbourne is also speculating on the intentions of these two countries." Claxton had few guesses, but the current Dutch cabinet government, Prime Minister Linden, was having a headache over this. However, unlike Claxton's guess, the German Empire's request had already appeared on the desk of the Linden cabinet government. It was written, "Germany actually asked the Netherlands to buy the East Kalimantan province on the island of Kalimantan." Chapter 811 Visit to Wellington, New Zealand. When will His Majesty and His Majesty arrive? I'm looking forward to his arrival. Who knows? It is said that Her Majesty Queen Alexandra will visit the orphanage in Wellington this time and use her private treasury to help Wellington build more primary schools and kindergartens. Really? I don't know about this. I only know that His Majesty William will visit the New Zealand squadron and give an important speech to the soldiers there. Nonsense. Who in the world doesn't know that our New Zealand fleet has the most frequent interactions with the South American Union Navy and Chile in South America? Almost half of the main forces of the alliance there come from the New Zealand fleet. Your Majesty's visit to the New Zealand fleet this time is obviously the smartest and most popular. A person in the distance lowered his hat as much as possible and listened to the discussions of the people waiting in line on both sides of the road. This person's face was covered with beards. He was about 45 years old and looked like a rough man. But his eyes betrayed him. He was unexpectedly calm and cold, which was not something that ordinary people could have. Hans was from MI6 in London. He was recruited by the British intelligence agency long before New Zealand was handed over to the Netherlands in 1866. At that time, he collected intelligence on the natives of New Zealand. At that time, he did not have time to take his family with him to evacuate other British colonies. The Netherlands quickly took over the rule of New Zealand. He had no choice but to stay. He originally thought that there would not be much intersection with Britain. However, since the battle between the Netherlands and Britain in Chile in South America in 1879, Britain was caught off guard and was defeated by the Netherlands. Soon, the chief of the British MI6 who originally recruited him came back to find him. Not long ago, he received a notice to follow the visiting Dutch King William IV and his wife. If he obtained recognized intelligence achievements, someone in London would help his family emigrate to the UK. I don't know why, but he did not refuse at that time. But for a period of time afterwards, he lived in regret. He saw all the changes in New Zealand. During the British rule in 1866, the British whites were burning, killing, looting and plundering everywhere, and the streets of Wellington were almost the same as those of a small town. However, after the Netherlands accepted New Zealand from Britain in 1866, New Zealand received huge capital investment. Wool and other raw materials here were continuously supplied to major cities in the far east of the Netherlands, such as Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Jakarta. After 14 years, New Zealand has formed two major economic belts, the North Island headed by Wellington and the South Island headed by Christchurch. Although the people here are not as rich as the Londoners in the UK, they are not much worse than other parts of the UK outside London. Because of this, Bass has already developed a resistance in his heart. Especially recently, when he saw his parents heard that William IV and his wife were about to visit Wellington, the sincere expressions of gratitude on their faces touched his mind greatly. In a mysterious way, he seemed to have made a decision for himself. While the situation in Europe was in chaos, William IV was traveling at this time. Yes, he left his children behind and was currently visiting Wellington, New Zealand with Queen Alexandra. If you control money, you control the world. If you have this financial power, you control the global currency, you control the world. In Europe, it is the Rothschild family that has this financial power. It is the Rothschild family that controls the European currency. It is the Rothschild family that controls the European financial world and challenges the power of the royal families and governments of European countries. William IV still remembered reading about the Rothschild family's financial power in Western Europe in the 19th and early 20th centuries, and the secret news of the Federal Reserve established by the American capital giant in the early 20th century. This news is precisely revealing the similarities between the families that control the two different organizations, so more people think that this is a testimony to the expansion of Jewish influence. The birth of the Federal Reserve also proves the most true portrayal of the Jews going to America after being persecuted in Europe and successfully ascending to the top. Perhaps many people would think that the Federal Reserve, an institution that began to control global currency in the second half of the 20th century, belongs to the United States. In fact, it is wrong to think so. It does not belong to any national institution, nor is it an institution of the American government, but to a private institution. Therefore, private capital controls the global currency and controls the lifeline of our world economy. Thinking of this, William IV couldn't help but smile. The Jews are still as cunning and smart as ever. They can be said to be one of the smartest nations in the world. Looking at the history of human development, this kind of money power has especially stimulated people's material desires, emotional desires and greedy money desires, resulting in an extremely serious polarization of the gap between the rich and the poor, and evaporating people's beliefs, conscience and famous morality. He exhaled. William IV faced the current situation in the world. In his opinion, the future situation will eventually move towards the core hidden danger of the money power war. Is it more scientific for the government to control money power or for private capital to control money power? These are the core human issues that William IV is most concerned about, rather than purely financial subjects, because they are far beyond the cultural vision of financial experts. The Rothschild family, which is now rampant in Europe, has made a friendship with the Netherlands without anyone knowing. Now, countries around the world, including major powers such as Britain, France, Germany, Russia and Austria, don't know how much money and financial information about their countries is continuously sent to Melbourne, Sydney or Perth for processing by ships from ports in the Netherlands such as The Hague and Amsterdam. How much money and whether the pockets of European countries and nobles are bulging are all in the information database controlled by William IV. Compared with the rest of the world, the Australian continent is lonely and surrounded by the sea. This unique and safe environment allows William IV to devote himself to overseas affairs and deploy overseas with sufficient warships and submarines. Just as William IV's thoughts drifted beyond the Earth and prepared to rush into space, he was also making the latest model of the Dutch Mercedes-Benz, which had just invented the windshield car sun and rain protection design. Queen Alexandra said at this time, "William, the German Empire has now asked us for the East Kalimantan province, and has frankly expressed its willingness to help Britain and the Netherlands to mediate the conflict. Just now, your intelligence revealed that the German Empire also asked Britain for the British Malay Island." Queen Alexandra said angrily, "Just like the forcible occupation of Schleswig and Holstein back then, now they want to use the same trick to obtain Kalimantan Island, and they want to eat both sides. What a good plan." Chapter 812, The Prototype of the Global Monetary and Financial System. 1880, a group of lonely journalists gathered outside King's Wharf in Wellington, New Zealand, North Island, Kingdom of the Netherlands. They had just witnessed a delegation of the country's top financiers leave King's Wharf with secret documents. It was not until years later that they realized what kind of mission it was, and even then, they did not understand that Dutch history had undergone a huge change after Wellington night. The delegation rode in sealed cars with closed window curtains provided by the Dutch Daimler Motor Company to a secret destination, led by Chancellor Van Hall, head of the Dutch National Finance Committee and dean of the School of Economics at the University of Groningen before 1870. After experiencing trade battles with Britain, foreign trade disputes to sanction France, and moving the capital from Amsterdam, Europe to Melbourne, Australia, William IV created the Netherlands Finance Committee in 1877 and incorporated its proposal into law. With the strong support of William IV, Congressman Sackham became the helmsman of the new committee. Sackham then led the members of the committee to visit various European countries for 2 years starting in early 1878. However, the travel expenses alone cost 3 million Dutch guilders, $600,000, £120,000, of public funds. It should be noted that the annual per capita income of the Netherlands was only £200, while the per capita income of the UK was £160, making the Netherlands the first in the world. However, he did not report the results of this trip, nor did he provide any banking reform plan. At King's Wharf in Wheeling, Congressman Sackham was accompanied by his personal assistant Hilton, Andrew, Assistant Minister of the Treasury and Special Assistant to the National Finance Committee, Frank, President of the East India National Bank, Vanderlip, President of the Far Eastern Commercial Bank, Davidson, President of the United Private Bank, Sir Henry, Senior Partner of the Royal Dutch Investment Company, also often referred to as the private envoy of the Royal Investment Company, and Norton, President of the Sydney First National Bank controlled by the Royal Investment Company. Joining the delegation before the convoy was about to start were Jules Darnetten, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of the Dutch Cabinet Government, and Nat Wallenberg, the President of Stockholm Bank, which was recently acquired by the Royal Dutch Investment Corporation. The eldest of the 4 children of André Wallenberg, the founder of the family, Bertie Charles Forbes, a financial writer who lived in Sydney 6 years ago, was originally in the United States and now founded Forbes in Sydney, the Netherlands. He recalled many years later, "Imagine that a most influential team of bankers in the country took advantage of the night, quietly slipped out of the city of Wellington in a private car, and secretly went dozens of miles away to enter a synagogue surrounded by mountains. They stayed there for a whole week, but acted in secret, so that no one's name was mentioned, and the servants didn't know their identities, let alone disclose to anyone this trip, which was the most bizarre and mysterious in the history of Dutch finance." This was not his exaggeration, but he just expressed the true story behind the famous Wellington Monetary Report for the first time, and how the new Dutch monetary system was written. This secret was successfully hidden from everyone. The public could not know a single word about this incident. All the convoys stopped at a platform that was paved with cement and was not often used. After arriving at the location, Sackham quietly asked all the participants to transfer, and then they set off again, successfully avoiding all Wellington reporters. The leader, Senator Sackham, told everyone frankly that he and the people behind him wanted to isolate everyone at the destination until they could research and formulate a scientific monetary system for the Netherlands, that is, the model of the future Dutch international reserve system. This was exactly what Sakhem, Andrew, van der Lip, Frank, Davidson and others had conspired to do, and Nat Wallenberg, the future first heir of the Wallenberg family, had contributed a lot to it. Finally, the founder of World Wealth magazine wrote in his future official biography, in the autumn of 1880, Sakhem, Forbes, Andrew, Frank, Nat, van der Lip, Jules Darneton, Hilton, Davidson, Sir Henry, Norton, and a mysterious richest man in Europe, went duck hunting in the wild with His Majesty King William IV and a group of 13 people. Reporters were waiting at King's Wharf in Wellington. Forbes walked out and said a few words loudly, and they dispersed without disclosing any details of this slightly strange trip. Congressman Sakhem asked Forbes how he dealt with the reporters, and Forbes did not reveal it. The above happened many years later, and at this time, in the destinations they were heading to, the mysterious host was meeting with his secret guest. The Netherlands supports the restoration of the Jewish nation. I know that the Rothschild family's companies have always followed the rules of the Jewish Sabbath and do not do any business on Saturdays. So I chose to invite you to visit on the Sunday after the Saturday just passed. In 1820, your third uncle, Mr. Nathan Rothschild, the king of British finance, announced that he would not do business with any German city that refused to grant citizenship to Jews. In 1850, when your fourth uncle, Karl, lent money to the Pope of Rome, he asked the Vatican to demolish the Jewish ghetto in Rome. In the 19th century, the Rothschild Bank in London announced that it would not lend to the Russian Tsar because the Tsarist government persecuted and abused Russian Jews. Edmund Rothschild has been in charge of the French branch of the Rothschild family since his father James Rothschild died in 1868. The reason why he appeared here this time was mainly because there were no third-generation male descendants in the German Frankfurt branch of the eldest uncle Amschel, the Austro-Hungarian Vienna branch of the second uncle Solomon, and the Italian Naples branch of the fourth uncle Karl. Moreover, his father James was the last of the second generation of the Rothschild family who passed away. If this was the case, it would not be his turn to attend this meeting, because there was also Lionel, the eldest son of the third uncle Nathan of the United Kingdom and Edmund's cousin. Unfortunately, the only second cousin of the third generation of the Rothschild family also passed away in London in 1879. Therefore, he was the only one left in the third generation of the Rothschild family, and the Rothschild family was now headed by him. Looking at William IV, who was about the same age as him, the two had been dealing with each other for more than 15 years since 1866. After 15 years of understanding, the two were very familiar with each other. William IV seemed to be very polite and talkative, but Edmund, who was familiar with him, had seen him angrily denying his side, especially when the two were meeting in South Chile, which was supported by Britain, was about to fight North Chile, which was supported by the Netherlands. William IV simply asked to sink the British fleet directly. He was stunned by this order at that time. Even Britain, the maritime overlord, did not give face, so who would William IV be afraid of? Later, he saw that only one of the 7 British Navy ships escaped, and the rest were annihilated and fed in the sea. From then on, he finally made up his mind and led the Rothschild family to secretly support the Netherlands. Just like this time, he became more than a member of the global monetary and financial system of William IV. After all, he still let the Rothschild family sit on the Dutch chariot. It's a bit late to update today. With the 2 chapters out in the past 2 days, a total of 5 chapters will be updated tomorrow. Chapter 813, Jerusalem is established? Edmund Rothschild, the Netherlands is willing to support the restoration of the Jewish nation, for which we are very grateful, but the Bahrain Islands are located in the Strait of Hormuz. The eastern part of this throat area is currently controlled by the Persian Empire. I am afraid that once we restore our nation there, we will face the blockade of the Persian Empire in and out of the strait. William IV, don't worry, don't forget that the UAE in the west is in our hands. Do you think, Sir Edmund, that the Persian Empire dares to go against us? Edmund Rothschild, no, that's not what I meant, Your Majesty. I'm just worried that this will bring more inconvenience to the Netherlands in the future. William IV, be more specific. Edmund Rothschild, the Persian Empire is currently facing oppression from Britain and India, and this country has always had a bad relationship with the Ottoman Empire. If the Netherlands has a dispute with this country because of us, then it will be good news for Britain and the Ottoman Empire. But when the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands is not good, it will be disadvantageous to the Netherlands. Moreover, the Ottoman Empire has many diplomatic interests for the Netherlands. If a country is established in Jewish Bahrain, the Netherlands will need to appease the Ottoman Empire, which is the most wary of the Jews. The diplomatic loss to the Netherlands will definitely be a huge burden. Edmund, so, we think that if a country is established on Bahrain Island, it will not be a good decision for the Netherlands. William IV looked at the guy in front of him with amusement. This guy obviously did not want to establish a Jewish state there. He was afraid that the new Jewish state would face suppression or even destruction by the Middle East countries. He was afraid that the Netherlands would not care and let it fend for itself. Therefore, he was absolutely unwilling to establish a country in Bahrain. However, he said that it was for the sake of the Netherlands. As expected of a financial worker, his brain was not something that ordinary people could keep up with. Edmund was obviously thick-skinned enough, and he said to himself, "Your Majesty, in fact, in comparison, I think if your Majesty gives up, we would rather establish the new Jewish state on the Hawaiian Islands, but I'm afraid that your Majesty is unwilling." William IV looked at the rogue patriarch of the richest family in Europe in front of him, and refused unhappily, "Don't even think about it. Hawaii's geographical location is the foundation for the Netherlands to dominate the Pacific. The Jewish state can choose other places, but Hawaii is definitely not possible." Edmund was sad when he heard this, but William IV was not bewitched and sat quietly. Seeing this, Edmund could only secretly curse himself for not being good enough, so he proposed again, "How about your Majesty? Do you think the South Island of New Zealand is okay? It is located in the southern hemisphere. The east is Chile in the eastern Pacific Ocean, the north is the North Island of New Zealand, the southwest is Tasmania, and the northwest is the Australian mainland. I think with the protection of the Netherlands, a staunch ally, even military expenses can be saved." "Military expenses can be saved?" William IV glared at him unhappily. "Is this a good idea? Although the South Island of New Zealand is located in a remote area, it faces Sydney and Melbourne, the ultimate heartland of the Netherlands. If the Jews are allowed to establish a country here, the future will be like a thorn piercing the edge of the heart of the Netherlands. Now the relationship between the Jews and the Dutch allies is good. If a Jew with ideas comes to power and becomes president in the future, the Netherlands will be weak in the face of the competition from the world hegemony rivals. The Jews are used to trading interests first. Will they pull the rivals to the South Island to station troops? Who knows? William IV will naturally not allow this to happen. Therefore, he said, "Don't even think about it here. It is reserved for the Netherlands as a back garden. Even if we use it to grow flowers, we will not give it to outsiders. Think about other places." Edmund thought for a while and showed his excitement again, saying, "Your Majesty, cede a piece of land in the Netherlands and Europe to us." William IV stared at Edmund Rothschild with a smile. The latter smiled awkwardly, and then said seriously, "In fact, I think that the Netherlands in Europe is full of big countries, which is a bit threatening to the Jews. Moreover, I believe in your Majesty's vision. A country as big as the Netherlands has left that place of trouble. It is better for the Jews not to establish a country in Europe. How about this, your Majesty? Where do you think is the best place for us to establish a country besides Bahrain?" "I think it is Jerusalem," William IV asked, "but if it is there, do you think you can defend it? Can you defend it?" This question is generally very insulting. But it also depends on the occasion. Edmund Rothschild is the patriarch of the richest family in Europe. Even Bismarck, Napoleon III and Queen Victoria would not say such a slap in the face to him directly, at least they would leave some face for the other party. But although William IV's question was unpleasant, Edmund's face was not embarrassed, but more thoughtful. "Yes, there are many good places, but the Jewish state, which is vigilant by various countries, will face places that are regarded as threats by various countries, not to mention that Jerusalem is in the hands of the Ottoman Empire. When the powerful Nathan III was there, he did not dare to fight for it from Queen Victoria, let alone now. The relationship between Britain and the Ottoman Empire has long deteriorated. As Britain weakened due to the rise of the Netherlands and other countries, the Ottoman Empire's attitude towards Britain has long become almost equal. It is very risky for the Rothschild family to let Britain test pressure and ask for it. Britain will not speak easily. This is why he, the patriarch of the Rothschild family, turned from supporting Britain to the Netherlands. Several nephews of Lionel's cousin are in London, while he is in Paris and secretly supporting the Netherlands. It can be said that the purpose of betting on many sides is self-evident. William IV seemed to see through his mind and said, "If the Netherlands reaches the level of world hegemony in the future, I think Jerusalem may not be the goal of the Jewish nation under our pressure." Edmund was delighted when he heard that, and stared at William IV with shining eyes. "Your Majesty, are you serious?" William IV promised solemnly, "If there really comes such a day in the Netherlands, then I will definitely fulfill what I said just now." Edmund was about to say something. At this moment, the person in charge outside the synagogue walked in and said, "Your Majesty, several guests have arrived outside and are waiting." Edmund immediately straightened his body, and then looked calm. William IV nodded to the butler and said, "Let them in." He turned to Edmund and said, "Wait, something important is about to begin. Wait, you are my secret weapon." Chapter 814, The Deputy Prime Minister's Speculation. In the Jewish synagogue, Chancellor Sackm, the director of the Dutch Financial Committee, and several others had waited for the summons and finally walked into this not-so-luxurious synagogue. Everything was simple. But to their surprise, they thought that only King William IV was there, but they didn't expect that there was another person inside. Even Chancellor Sackm and the team looked at the middle-aged man who looked old and arrogant. When he saw several people coming in, he just took a look and sat up straight, but didn't mean to greet them directly, which made Sackm more confused. However, these thoughts did not prevent him from saluting King William IV. After the etiquette was completed, they each found a seat to sit down. Edmund sat in the first seat on the right-hand side of King William IV. Therefore, as the head of the delegation, Chancellor Sackm sat on the upper left, while Dang, as the Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, sat in the second chair on the right. The second seat on the left opposite was Frank, the President of the National Bank of East India, the third was Vanderlip, the President of the Far Eastern Commercial Bank, and Davidson, the President of the United Private Bank, sat in the fourth seat on the left. The fifth seat was occupied by Nat Wallenberg, President of Stockholm Bank. The sixth seat was occupied by Hilton, Deputy and Secretary of the Financial Committee, SECOM. The third seat on the right was occupied by Andrew, Assistant Minister of the Treasury and Special Assistant of the National Financial Committee. The fourth and fifth seats were occupied by Sir Henry, Senior Partner of the Royal Dutch Investment Company, also commonly known as the Private Envoy of the Royal Investment Company, and Norton, President of the First National Bank of Sydney controlled by the Royal Investment Company. The sixth seat was occupied by Bertie Forbes, founder of Forbes and financial writer. After the few people sat down, Nat Wallenberg, President of Stockholm Bank, never took his eyes off the man sitting to the right of William IV. His eyes were strange and shocked. No one knew his thoughts. He thought to himself, how could he be here? This is one of the most confidential meeting places in the Netherlands. The entire meeting was kept secret. He came here in secret. I was the only foreigner originally. Moreover, the Wallenberg family, which is second only to the royal family in Sweden, fully supports William IV and has made a lot of efforts. I originally wanted to ask for more support from the Netherlands for my family, but now after seeing the person in front of him, he found that he was wrong. Compared with them, I am simply a dwarf. However, how did William IV impress the other party to bring this top European figure here? In fact, besides him, there was another person present who knew Edmund in front of him, and that person was Jules Donatan. You should know that Jules Donatan was elected Prime Minister of Belgium in 1861 and served for 2 terms. It was not until 1869 that the 3 northern provinces of Belgium returned to the Netherlands. Jules Donatan moved to the Dutch political arena with the capital moved to the Australian continent. In 1870, he established the Dutch Socialist Party in Melbourne and became the leader of the 3rd largest political party in the Dutch political arena, which made people mistakenly think that he was a newcomer in the political arena. When he was the Prime Minister of Belgium, he met James Rothschild next to Napoleon III when he visited Paris, the French Empire, and also met James' successor Edmund. As soon as he came in, although he hadn't seen him for many years, he still recognized this leading figure in the current Parisian financial world after seeing him. His mind was also shocked, but after many years of experience in the political arena, he had long been calm, so he just looked at Edmund, who was calm and composed, with a deep meaning, and then secretly glanced at William IV, who was indifferent, with fear and admiration in his heart. Others did not think that Edmund was weak, but they would not be so eager to get close to him. They pretended not to see him and found a place to sit down. William IV saw everyone's actions in the same way, but he did not say anything after they sat down. Then he said, You may be a little surprised to see you here today. Why did I call you here? He looked around at several people and finally stopped at Jules Stanadang. He asked with a smile, Your Excellency the Minister of Finance, how about you guess what the purpose of my calling you here is? Suddenly, several people looked at Jules Stanadang. They could not help but guess that William IV had already told the other party the answer and asked Jules Stanadang to be the conference speaker. However, they saw Jules Stanadang's thoughtful look and immediately knew that they were wrong. Obviously, the Dutch Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance was confused. Suddenly, everyone looked at Congressman Sachem, because as the head of the group and the organizer, he should know it. Don't look at me, I do know, but I'm just acting. Since His Majesty asked, I can only come out later, Sachem said with a wry smile. Old fox. Several people cursed each other secretly. After thinking for a moment, Jules Stanadang's eyes fell on Sachem, and he guessed, since His Majesty invited us here, and the head of the group is Mr. Sachem, who manages the financial currency of the Netherlands in the Financial Committee, then the content of the meeting must be related to finance. Seeing that William IV did not object, he said, and those who participated in the meeting, have you noticed that the three major private commercial banks of the three major Dutch consortiums, as well as the Royal Investment Company, Stockholm Bank, etc., plus Mr. Forbes who specializes in publishing financial news, and I am the Minister of Finance of the Netherlands, so there are some distinct factors, and the answer has jumped out of the paper, that is, His Majesty is preparing to hold a financial and monetary meeting, and the content is mainly financial, and it is even related to the issuance of currency and national debt by banks. He glanced at Edmund Rothschild, and finally said, I think the world situation has entered a dangerous stage. The Netherlands, Britain and France are all political and military powers. At the same time, because they are global economic powers, their influence is very large. Your Majesty has convened senior executives, including Mr. Nat of the Stockholm Bank of Sweden, together here in response to the provocation of Britain and France against the Netherlands. This is to carry forward the remaining financial influence of the Netherlands around the world. As Stanadang frankly spoke, everyone couldn't help but look at William IV at the top. Seeing that he did not object or admit it, everyone knew that what Jules Stanadang had guessed was probably right. Everyone could not help but admire him. He was indeed a natural politician. He was less than 40 years old, but he had already held high positions in two countries. He built the third largest party in the Netherlands and used his ingenuity to unite the Christian party to become the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister of the ruling coalition cabinet government. Even William IV on the stage admired him very much. Edmund Rothschild next to him had an admiring expression on his face. He even sighed, France lacks such daring politicians. Paris is controlled by those old politicians, so he made a bet on the Netherlands. Chapter 815 Central Reserve Bank. The Netherlands is currently facing pressure from Britain and France. It's time to fight back with real force. Militarily, we Dutch have never been afraid of anyone. In terms of allies, the Netherlands has Sweden, Denmark, the Kingdom of Siam, Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela, Colombia, Greece, Spain, etc. In terms of torches, it also has the three Central American Federation countries. Partner countries include Qing Dynasty, Korea, Tsarist Russia, America, and even Germany, Austria-Hungary, America, etc. that are not averse to the Netherlands. Our alliance system is spread all over the world. I don't know why people think that the Netherlands will lose when facing Britain, but I can tell everyone here clearly that the Netherlands will dominate the Far East and the South, and the surrounding areas are all Dutch amusement parks. Europe is just a stage for the Netherlands, not a den of dragons and tigers. William IV's powerful words made everyone, including Edmund Rothschild and Nat Wallenberg, excited. Edmund thought to himself, this is the demeanor of a monarch. Napoleon I was frightened by the Germans led by Bismarck and lost his courage. I haven't heard such a declaration for many years. Nat thought to himself, Sweden is hiding in Northern Europe and is out of tune with the world. The cold air makes all Swedes less impatient, but also less ambitious to expand their influence. My father was right to ask me to come here. It seems that in the future, in addition to continuing to consolidate the influence of the Stockholm base, the Wallenberg family should also invest more energy in the Kingdom of the Netherlands to expand Wallenberg's world-class scale in the world. The two people's ideas are just one of them. Everyone was moved by William IV's words. At this time, William IV stated his purpose: I want to establish a national central bank in the Netherlands. As these words fell, the whole room suddenly became quiet. Central bank. A sort of domus hanging over the heads of all banking and financial workers? Is William Ivey going to take action against capitalists, bankers, financiers and other uncontrolled people? Those present are all top figures in the financial world. They are used to investing freely. If they agree to William Ivey, their future freedom will be gone. Will they still be like this? Therefore, William Ivey's request made people, including the presidents of major financial groups, look afraid. Jules Darnaton looked at His Majesty William Ivey in confusion. He didn't understand why His Majesty suddenly wanted to do this. Although the Netherlands is a good financial country, financiers are also people and have different ideas. Isn't His Majesty afraid that the Wallenberg family of Stockholm Bank will not be willing to be controlled and will go back to another country? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Nat Wallenberg next to him. But to his surprise, he found that everyone else was looking at Nat. But Nat Wallenberg was looking at the stranger on the right side of William Ivey, Edmund Rothschild, whom Jules Darnaton knew. Jules Darnaton thought to himself, it seems that this young master of Wallenberg knows Edmund. So, it seems that the heir of Wallenberg is ready to see the attitude of the Rothschild family. As Jules Darnaton and the others looked at Edmund, the others naturally looked at him as well. At this moment, Senator Sackham suddenly stood up and pointed at Edmund and introduced him. You may not know, this gentleman is from Paris. Paris? Others who did not know Edmund's identity were puzzled that a Parisian would appear here. However, thinking that this person was invited by His Majesty, then this Parisian is definitely trustworthy, and His Majesty would not say what he said just now in front of him. However, this person is very unfamiliar, and what is his status in Paris? If he is young, he would not be so arrogant just now, but if he is old, it seems that Napoleon III will not be him, and the Crown Prince is still young now. Other Prime Ministers' sons and the like do not know how to enjoy the treatment just now. They all couldn't guess why William Ivey made the other party a guest of honor at this meeting. Thinking of this, they still waited for Senator Sackham's answer. Let me tell you. His name is Edmund. Seeing that everyone suddenly looked at him with enlightenment, William Ivey smiled and said, yes, it's just what you guessed. He's from the Rothschild family and is now the patriarch of the Rothschild family. Rothschild family. Edmund Rothschild. Oh my God, it's him. Even he appeared here, so has the Rothschild family secretly turned to the Netherlands? Everyone looked at William Ivey in surprise. If the Rothschild family secretly turned to the Netherlands, then with the support of this giant that has been rampant in the European financial world for many years, the Netherlands can get unimaginable huge resources when facing Britain and France, and have more tools in the toolbox when dealing with Britain and France. Thinking of this, they all understood that William Ivey was indifferent to Britain's provocations in the past 2 years, and he responded to them according to their moves. Even when France joined Britain and the pressure on the Netherlands increased sharply, he responded without changing his face. Many people thought that this was just a rush forward, but they were all wrong. It turned out that His Majesty had already made other moves in secret, and the Wallenberg family's surrender had already surprised them. After all, with the strength of the Valen family in Sweden, it is only a matter of time before the Swedish royal family is overthrown. His joining ensures that Sweden will stand on the side of the Netherlands unchanged. And now with the joining of the Rothschild family, the strength of the financial hegemony of the 5 major financial capitals in Europe, London, Vienna, Paris, Berlin, and Naples, will become the secret misappropriation of power by the Netherlands. This is definitely a windfall for the Netherlands. Therefore, the appearance of this Edmund is definitely a shocking and surprising event for everyone present. After they calmed down, they suddenly found a problem. Since they invested secretly, why are they now open in front of them? Aren't they afraid of being followed by those countries? Then, everyone thought of an embarrassing question. The goal mentioned by William Ivey just now, the establishment of the Central Bank of the Netherlands. They and others were very resistant in their hearts, and many people even wanted to stand up and oppose it directly at that time. But now with the intentional leak of Edmund's identity, they suddenly couldn't speak. Even the Rothschild family did not object, and the same went for the Wallenberg family. Those who were in CAO's camp but had their hearts in Han supported them. Could we, the local Dutch financiers, really rebel against them? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 816: The Birth of the Dutch Reserve System. Under the stimulation of Edmund Rothschild, other participants no longer opposed the establishment of a central bank as William IV had expected. However, various debates arose on the issue of establishment. The central bank currency reform plan prepared by Wellington will be submitted to the Dutch Parliament in the form of a work of the Financial Committee. The participants of the bill must remain confidential. After the currency panic in the 1860s, the American public's anger towards bankers rose sharply, so much so that no congressman dared to vote in favor of a proposal containing Wall Street stains, regardless of whether those people paid for their original campaign. Feedback from the United States made Wellington's central bank plan somewhat secretive. After all, the United States has always had a tradition of opposing Americans' opposition to the implementation of a central bank. It originated from the plan of the First Bank of the United States by Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the Republican and Democratic Party, against Alexander Hamilton, the head of the Federalist Party and the Secretary of the Treasury, and was supported by Vice President James Rothschild. There was also the seventh president, Andrew Jackson, who successfully defeated Alexander Hamilton's second bank plan. At that time, Nicholas Biddle served as the spokesperson for James Rothschild in Paris. Both of them were capable subordinates of Edmund Rothschild's father James in the expansion of the Americas, but even with Hamilton's support, they failed in the American plan in the end. Thomas Jefferson and others hit the investment of foreign banks, but created America's own independent treasury system, which should be conducive to America's escape from the control of financiers so far. After all, the above are all some kind of temptations of the Rothschild family to America, and the result of the temptation is that they all failed in the end. It was precisely because of these attempts that William IV learned a sense of urgency from America, so he had the idea of creating a central bank in the Netherlands. The reason why Edmund was brought over was not only to use him to deal with domestic financiers and make them compromise, but also to warn Rothschild. At this time, Frank, president of the East India National Bank, asked, "I wonder how our National Financial Committee can gain the trust of the people." Others looked over at once. "Yes, the public's approval is more worrying to your Majesty than their opinions. Perhaps, your Majesty will suspend the plan because of this?" Looking forward to it, William IV shook his head and said, "I have a way." Finally, after several days of discussion, William implemented the suggestion and established the final rules and regulations. The proposal to establish the Netherlands National Central Reserve Bank promised the following: first, to organize the stock subscribers into a company; second, to enable the subscribers to hold land as legal entities. This violated the current permanent land management law. Third, to allow foreign stock subscribers to hold land certificates. This violated the current foreign management law. Fourth, after the owner of the land died, the land was transferred to the heirs in a specific order. This changed the current inheritance process. Fifth, the land could not be confiscated or reclaimed. This violated the current handover and repossession law. Sixth, private wealth was transferred to the heirs in a specific order, which violated the current distribution law. Seventh, the state granted stock subscribers exclusive and exclusive banking rights. This violated the current monopoly law. Eighth, the subscribers were given legislative power, which was higher than the laws of the states. To this end, relevant legislation must be made to prevent the central bank from being subject to the legislatures of the states, and these laws were then implemented. Finally, William IV said, "I believe that the Constitution is based on the fact that all powers not granted by the Constitution to the Netherlands, nor powers that are not prevented from being delegated to the provinces, are reserved for the autonomy of the provinces or the people of the provinces. In particular, the limits of the powers of the Parliament are set. Every step beyond is to occupy unlimited power and no further explanation can be made. In my opinion, the establishment of the bank and the powers assumed by this constitutional bill are not granted to the Dutch government by the Constitution, but by the Parliament." On September 20, 1880, the Dutch public asked the Parliament to legislate to prevent the events that were considered to have caused currency panic from attracting world attention. Therefore, it seemed inevitable that the Netherlands would start currency reform and become a topic of conversation. The Dutch National Financial Committee stood up at this time and righteously stated that it would do its utmost to prevent and manipulate such reforms and set up a special group meeting. The director of the committee, Senator Sack, continued to serve as the head of the group because he was the whip of the majority party Christian Party in the Dutch Senate. This title was just a name that William IV and others chose to avoid the public's disgust at the appearance of the central bank. For this reason, William IV and others chose the Dutch Kingdom Reserve System, the same function as the Federal Reserve. This title made people mistakenly think that this was not a central bank. However, those who attended the meeting knew that the Wellington Plan was indeed a central bank plan. It performs the main functions of a central bank. The owners of the bank are private individuals who make profits by holding bank shares, thereby manipulating the currency and credit of the Netherlands. In the future Forbes autobiography, the chapter about Wellington wrote about this secret meeting, how to manipulate the Dutch Kingdom Reserve Bank. It must be controlled by the parliament, and the royal family and the government must attend the bank's board of directors and have a full understanding of all matters of the bank, but most of the bank's directors will be directly or indirectly elected by the bank's federation. Of course, the royal family and government board members are excluded. In fact, William IV did this only when he had no choice. To be honest, he wanted to hold all the power in his hands and not give it to others, but he knew it was impossible. Don't tell him that he is a king. In Europe, the power of the king has been weakened to a low point. Even those with great power have to take into account what is happening in other European countries. For example, Sweden now needs the population of the parliament to promote industrialization. Oscar II can only be carried out. It is difficult. The most pitiful thing is that Brazilian Emperor Pedro II is now facing the constraints of Prime Minister Fonseca and can hardly move forward. Therefore, William IV agreed that the proposed Dutch Federal Reserve Bank will be controlled by the Dutch Parliament and be responsible to the royal family and the government, but the vast majority of the bank's directors will be born from the bank consortium participating today. Of course, in the future, it will depend on whether they can continue to maintain their status or change people, depending on their own abilities. This is the birth of a board of directors. In the final version of the Wellington Plan, the Dutch Federal Reserve Committee will be proposed by the Prime Minister and appointed by the King, but the real function of the committee will be controlled by the Dutch Federal Reserve Advisory Committee. The members of the Dutch Federal Reserve Advisory Committee will be selected by the chairman of the 10 Dutch reserve banks and are required to keep it secret from the public. I originally wanted to update 5 chapters, but there were some things, so I only updated the chapter, and the rest will be added later. Chapter 817 The Establishment of the Tripartite Alliance of the Netherlands, Spain, and Siam. 1880, when the Netherlands had just announced the establishment of the Dutch Federal Reserve System, which was attracting financial powers such as Britain, France, Russia, and the United States to conduct research on it, the Spanish Congress officially announced the adoption of the Reciprocal Access Agreement just signed by Spain and the Netherlands, and supported the Spanish government to establish a formal military alliance with the Netherlands in the Pacific. The signing of this agreement means that once Britain, France and the Netherlands go to war, Spain will be able to intervene militarily and will directly participate in the Dutch military war to jointly ally against Britain and France. Queen Isabel II of the Kingdom of Spain even described this as an extraordinary moment for the alliance between Spain and the Netherlands in the Madrid Parliament. Spain will wholeheartedly, thoroughly and comprehensively adhere to the alliance with the Netherlands and is committed to building a protection system with the Netherlands. In addition, Queen Isabella II said, "I will support the 3+3 talks between the finance ministers, foreign ministers and defense ministers proposed by the Netherlands to reach a consensus on various arrangements for strengthening military deployment and economic mutual assistance between the two countries, including the West Netherlands Security Treaty covering land and sea, West Netherlands economic mutual assistance between Europe and the Far East, and reducing tariffs to promote trade and employment." In addition, she also expressed support for the two countries' previous announcement of a number of military deployments, and the intention of Xiang Zhuang's sword dance was very clear. She also said that in addition to strengthening military cooperation, the Netherlands and Spain are also exploring trade and political linkages, and seem to be interested in accelerating and strengthening cooperation between the two countries in terms of economy, trade and supply chain. Various signs show that Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes's alliance trip to the Netherlands is undoubtedly preparing for possible military conflicts in the dispute between the British and Dutch Malacca Straits, especially in the wrestling in Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific. Compared with the conservative Antonio Canovas del Castillo, who insists on maintaining ordinary relations with Britain, maintaining diplomacy with both the north and south of France, and is unwilling to lean towards the Netherlands. The Spanish Liberal Prime Minister Praxedes is regarded as a comprehensive anti-British and pro-Dutch faction. Moreover, the situation is stronger than people. Praxedes' current diplomatic actions have gone further than his predecessor Antonio's route, and the path of military reorganization is clearer. Antonio, a true conservative, has received more support and positive responses among the conservatives in Spain, which also shows that the resentment towards Britain in Spain is increasing, and the expectation of the Netherlands as Spain's ally is more valued. It also reflects Spain's pessimism about the domestic division of its traditional ally France, because they all support Spain in preparing for war. Spain should be more in contact with the tight ring of Spain's increasing weakness after Britain defeated Spain and knocked Spain off the altar from the position of the first naval power in the Atlantic. Isabella II and others tried to use the Netherlands to accelerate the development of Spain as a military power. For Spain, after Britain defeated Spain at sea and supported the independence of South American countries from Spain together with France, leaving Spain with only the larger colonies of Cuba and the Philippines, Spain's international status began to enter an embarrassing position. Austria, Britain, France, Tsarist Russia, Prussia, Germany surpassed Spain successively, from a global power, was almost suppressed to a regional country, and was suppressed by France and chased by Italy. Therefore, there is no Spaniard who does not bear a grudge against Britain, especially when Britain still occupies Gibraltar. For the Spanish people, the dark clouds of war are a must for high vigilance and an ominous sign. Therefore, Prime Minister Praxedes' visit to Sydney and Melbourne and the summit with William IV and Prime Minister Lyndon can be said to be the climax of the alliance journey that he promoted Spain and the Netherlands to declare to the world. The two sides not only strengthened the alliance between the Netherlands and Spain in a high-profile manner, but also directly targeted Britain and France, the two old enemies that Spain has fallen into. And Madrid tried to express to the people of the world that Spain was unwilling to become a small and medium-sized country. This time Praxedes not only visited the Netherlands, but also visited Bangkok, the capital of the Kingdom of Siam, and was obviously willing to support the Netherlands' allies to fight against Britain and France. At the same time, on his way back, he also visited Bogotá, Colombia, a former Spanish colony, with the support of the Netherlands, where he met with Colombian President Rafael Núñez. There, on behalf of the Spanish government, he apologized to all South American indigenous peoples for the past 200 years of colonization and hoped to be forgiven. He hoped that South American countries could become Spain's political partners. He said that Spain would support the economic and security development of South America. We have submitted applications to the Netherlands and the South American Union. We are willing to become an observer country of the Union, and even become a formal member country after being recognized by all countries in the future. After that, he set off to visit a series of South American allied countries, including Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Venezuela in the north. In name, it was to apologize, but in fact, it was to strengthen the bilateral and multilateral defense cooperation between Spain and various countries, hoping to improve relations with the Netherlands and gather allies for potential military and conflict with Britain and France. The Kingdom of the Netherlands had just released its own security environment strategy white paper before the visit of Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes, and regarded Britain as an increasingly destructive global power. After meeting Praxedes in Melbourne, Prime Minister Lyndon announced that he would take more and more active coordinated actions with Spain in defense cooperation. When talking about the world situation facing the crisis of war due to tense relations, Praxedes described the Netherlands as a country with relatively rich resources and the highest peace-loving index. Spain's foreign policy and security policy are the same as those of the Netherlands, and the two countries have room for cooperation in facing security challenges. Spain faces threats from Britain and France at sea and on land. The environment around the Mediterranean and Atlantic Ocean facing the British and French navies is harsh. Spain often faces threats from Britain and France. As Spain's relationship with them becomes increasingly unstable, security cooperation with the Netherlands will help reduce Spain's strategic vulnerability to Britain and France alone. Praxedes' trip did not include the United States, perhaps because the American Stephen government has been more anti-Dutch recently, not to mention that Stephen seems to be flirting with Britain and Germany, which makes Praxedes put the Netherlands in a diplomatic priority position, and he can only temporarily separate the United States. However, he once described the United States as Spain's partner country, which shows that Spain still hopes to interact with the United States. His itinerary also did not include a visit to Berlin, perhaps because German Chancellor Bismarck had visited Madrid in March this year and described Spain as Germany's value-based diplomatic partner at the time. The two drank and talked happily in Madrid at the time, but Praxede's first visit to a major country during his tenure was to the Netherlands instead of Berlin, London, Paris, Vienna or St. Petersburg, nor to Lisbon, Portugal, which has always been close. This reflects a major shift in Spain's global diplomacy. Last November, the Spanish naval commander personally supported a warship to stop at the port of Amsterdam on its way to the Nordic Alliance exercise, and was warmly received by the Dutch local commander there. This was the first time that it had stopped directly at the host country Sweden. After meeting with William IV and Lynn, the Spanish Prime Minister's cabinet government obviously received the support of Isabella II, and the Spanish Congress has endorsed it and passed a resolution to upgrade the relationship between the two countries to a strategic alliance. The two sides also reborn and will establish a consultation mechanism between the two diplomatic, financial and defense departments. In addition, the Kingdom of Siam also agreed to follow the Netherlands and Spain to jointly safeguard the security interests of Southeast Asia. At this moment, it showed that a brand new group was established in the world. In fact, the three countries have begun negotiations to establish a three-country duty-free trade alliance, similar to the North German alliance established by Prussia in the past. With the liberalization of trade, the trade of the three countries will appear as a whole in the future. It is a foregone conclusion that Spain will use Dutch capital to develop the colonization of the Philippines. Facing the oppression of Britain and France on the west coast, the Kingdom of Siam can only survive with the support of the Netherlands, its ally. Faced with the economic infiltration of the Netherlands, Chulalongkorn, the King of Siam, naturally did not dare to object. So it was only natural for the Kingdom of Siam to become a Dutch economic colony in future plans. Of course, King Chulalongkorn of Siam may not have intended to win over Spain to balance the Netherlands, so when Spain proposed to strengthen the ties between the two countries, Chulalongkorn agreed without hesitation. Prince Albert looked at William IV and said, "Father, the Netherlands has now completed its own alliance framework, but just like a triangle, it needs two sides such as Spain and the Kingdom of Siam to support it, and we the Netherlands can only be the bottom side." William IV: "Yes, the Netherlands alone will never become the most powerful country in the world. We also need to deal with different people. Therefore, you must remember that you can suppress others, but you cannot let your allies form their own alliances with other allies to balance you. We pass the ball and then keep an eye on the ball from the beginning, so that everything is under our control." Prince Albert: "The two sides of the triangle are very important. Now the Netherlands is the bottom side, and the Kingdom of Siam and Spain are the isosceles sides. However, the Kingdom of Siam does not seem to be as good as Spain, right? Will this cause unnecessary trouble for us?" William IV: "You are right, so we have been laying the groundwork for this from the beginning." Prince Albert: "William IV, the Netherlands has three major political parties, and currently, do you know which party the Kingdom of Siam supports the most in the Netherlands?" Prince Albert: "This is very important." William IV: "Very crucial. Chapter 818 We want to exchange the Malay Peninsula, shall we?" 1880, Joseph Beit, the socialist foreign minister of the Dutch ruling coalition cabinet, visited Bangkok, the capital of the Kingdom of Siam, where he was received by King Chulalongkorn. Although Chulalongkorn was only 27 years old, he had been on the throne for 5 years in 1873, and he began to rule in person when he came of age in 1873. Siam was 20 years old at that time, and it has been 7 years now. The entire Kingdom of Siam is in his hands. Because of this, he is very worried about the current difficulties faced by the Kingdom of Siam. Facing Joseph Beit in front of him, he did not shy away from saying, "Internationally, to the west of Siam, Britain interpreted India and incorporated Burma into British India through the Anglo-Burmese War. In the south, Britain established the Straits Colony on the Malay Peninsula, pressing the southern gate of Siam, Thailand. In the east, France also made North and South Vietnam its protectorate through 2 wars, and further extended its claws to Cambodia. Because of our strenuous resistance, France still occupied eastern Cambodia for itself. Surrounding countries fell one by one, and the Kingdom of Siam seemed to be unable to protect itself. Even the former suzerain, the Qing dynasty, could not protect itself at this time. Before, the Kingdom of Siam still carried the imprint of the Middle Ages and was operating ineffectively. Until the late 1960s, With the support of the Netherlands, our economy developed. Chulalongkorn, Rama V., said with a bitter face, the biggest difficulty at present is to defend our territory. Your Excellency, as the head of the Netherlands in charge of diplomacy, you can see clearly that with the increasing threats from Britain and France, especially France, if we do not reform, the Kingdom of Siam may lose its independent and free international status. He looked up at Bite and said hopefully, Britain and France are threatening the security of Siam. If we do not change the administration enough, I think it will endanger our security and make us lose the right to rule the country. Joseph Bite has been quietly listening to the truth of the only native king in Southeast Asia who still holds sovereignty. From his father Rama IV to the early days of his reign, they had a difficult time dealing with Britain, France, Germany, the Netherlands and other countries. Taking advantage of the fact that Britain and France both wanted to annex Siam but were concerned about each other's situation, the Kingdom of Siam became a buffer zone between the British and French spheres of influence, temporarily maintaining its independence, but this was not a long-term solution after all. Only by reforming internal and diplomatic tendencies and following the historical trend could it survive in the harsh law of the jungle. After 1870, the Kingdom of Siam turned to the Netherlands in diplomacy, which made Britain and France angry. If it were not for the full support of the Netherlands and the loss of France in the Cambodian War, the Kingdom of Siam would have been defeated long ago. Now that Britain, France and the Netherlands have completely fallen out, the Kingdom of Siam is not afraid to follow the footsteps of the Netherlands. Even after seeing the alliance between Spain and the Netherlands, it can't wait to form a triple alliance with Spain with the Netherlands. It can be seen how eager Chulalongkorn, the King of Siam, is to use Spain and the Netherlands to fight against Britain and France. Your Majesty knows what the King of Siam is thinking. That is why we admire your Majesty's loyalty to the Netherlands as an ally. Therefore, we will always stand behind the Kingdom of Siam and fully support your position. In the past, the relationship between the Netherlands and Britain and France was neither good nor bad, so there were some things we could only do but not say. But now that era of silence is over. Now that the hostility between Britain and the Netherlands has been made public, things that were not allowed to be done in the past can now be easily solved, said Joseph Bite. Chulalongkorn's brows relaxed and he asked, what are you saying, Your Excellency Bite? Joseph Bite said without hesitation, Our Majesty hopes that the Kingdom of Siam will transfer the jurisdiction of the area south of Chumpon on the Malay Peninsula to the Netherlands. Chulalongkorn frowned. The Netherlands wants to take away all our outlets to the Indian Ocean. After saying that, he showed some anger. The Kingdom of Siam was a top regional power in Southeast Asia. Now half of Cambodia in the east was occupied by France, and 2/3 of Laos in the north was occupied. Together, this made the Kingdom of Siam lose 1/3 of the entire Kingdom of Siam. Joseph Bite, we only want military management rights, and there is no claim to territorial sovereignty. Joseph Bite patiently advised, the Netherlands has always liked to negotiate with its allies and make money through cooperation. It will not force sales. I know that your Majesty is afraid that the people of the Kingdom of Siam will be resentful and damage your Majesty's popularity. Please rest assured, your Majesty, we have already prepared a solution. Chulalongkorn looked at him questioningly, and Joseph Bite said without changing his face, the Netherlands is willing to lease this place in the Kingdom of Siam in barter. Chulalongkorn was immediately relieved. He was afraid that the Netherlands would force it, although he knew that William IV usually used soft power. After heaving a sigh of relief, he hurriedly asked, what is the Netherlands willing to exchange for this? Guyana in America? Chulalongkorn shook his head. It was the only legitimate territory of the Netherlands in America, and it was also the most important base for the Netherlands to intervene in the southwest Atlantic of South America. The Netherlands should not easily make a move. Just like when he studied politics and economics for 2 years at the University of Melbourne, he was very familiar with the Dutch World Territory. Although Guyana was barren, its location was critical. Just like the seemingly desolate Alaska Peninsula, it looked worthless, but its location was very important for the Netherlands' hegemony in the Pacific, so the Netherlands would not let it go. New Zealand was even more out of the question, as it was a guard island that protected the Netherlands in the heart of Australia. Sumatra? It would be better not to exchange it. Sumatra was more valuable than the part of the Kingdom of Siam on the Malay Peninsula that had to be returned. Could it be New Guinea? Thinking of this, Chulalongkorn directly denied it. What a joke. That is the largest naval factory in the Netherlands and the most important construction base for Dutch surface ships. It is also fully equipped with military-industrial facilities. Would the Netherlands be willing to give it to the Kingdom of Siam in exchange for part of the Malay Peninsula? It is absolutely impossible. After all, the western part of the Malay Peninsula is still the British colony of Burma, and the eastern part of Malaya and Singapore are in the hands of the British. On the contrary, the island of New Guinea has been operated by the Dutch for decades and is deeply rooted. Whoever wants to exchange it is a fool. Thinking about it, he couldn't guess where the territory the Netherlands wanted to exchange was. In the end, he could only turn his attention to Joseph Beit and wait for the answer. Joseph Beit knew that he was almost hanging, so he took out a map and showed it to Chulalongkorn. He pointed his right finger to an area in the middle of the eastern part of the West African continent, separated from the Malay Peninsula by the Indian Ocean, and announced the answer: the place we are willing to give up is. Chapter 819. The Netherlands wants to support a new Japan. Naturally, the Netherlands will not let the Kingdom of Siam suffer. We are willing to support the Kingdom of Siam in expanding its global presence. Before coming, Prime Minister Lyndon had agreed, and His Majesty William IV had also nodded in agreement to divide Kenya, which is located between the eastern part of Africa and the western part of the Indian Ocean, into two parts, and pack up the north part, as a barter, to exchange the territory of the Malay Peninsula with the Kingdom of Siam. Kenya has been measured by our surveyors and has an area of about 580,000 square kilometers, which is equal to the area of your country except Laos and Cambodia. So we divided into two parts, north and south, and exchanged nearly 300,000 square kilometers for 100,000 square kilometers of your Malay Peninsula. This should be regarded as the Netherlands' explanation to the Kingdom of Siam. Kenya? King Chulalongkorn of the Kingdom of Siam looked at the African continent, or more precisely, at the territory pointed to by the Dutch Foreign Minister Joseph Beit. On this symbol of Kenya's territory, the perimeter was drawn with red lines, and one of the two parts was divided into black lines. Chulalongkorn didn't know much about Africa, but he knew that it had become a playground for European powers. Even the emerging power, America, didn't seem to have a colony there. During his 2 years studying at the University of Melbourne in Australia, he heard that if you don't have colonies in Africa, you can't call yourself a European power. Joseph Beit happened to say at this time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was so powerful in the past. In the Austro-German War, Nigeria was finally given to Germany. Now there are only a few small colonies left. Even the Russian Empire, which is known for its hegemony in the Eurasian continent, only has Ghana and southwestern Burkina Faso in Africa. Yes, there are only these two small countries. Although the Kingdom of Siam exchanged 100,000 square kilometers of territory in the Malay Peninsula with us, it was forced by the situation, but the Kingdom of Siam exchanged more than 290,000 square kilometers of territory and tripled the income. Moreover, the Kingdom of Siam has entered Africa like a powerful country in one fell swoop, and the world status of the Kingdom of Siam will completely change. Looking at Chulalongkorn, whose breath became anxious, Joseph Beit admired His Majesty William IV even more. Yes, it was the word worship. Before he came, he actually didn't think of taking territory from the Kingdom of Siam. After all, it was taking advantage of the situation, and it was an important ally of the Netherlands. Especially in the case of the Qing dynasty when Britain and France were still eyeing it covetously. But His Majesty insisted on taking this place, and also analyzed Chulalongkorn's personality and likes and dislikes, one of which was that he was ambitious and valued face more than anything else. So there was 3 times the African territory in exchange for 1 times the tropical rainforest Malay Peninsula. William IV even said directly that he saw the importance of this important transportation route, which was important for controlling the Strait of Malacca, and at the same time being able to intervene in the Gulf of Thailand, Gulf of Siam, and the larger South High and the Western Pacific. Sure enough, when it was said that northern Kenya was exchanged for the territory of the Kingdom of Siam on the Malay Peninsula, Chulalongkorn was tempted. Seeing this, Joseph Beit attacked again and said, Kenya is located in East Africa and has a key geographical location. The northern coast is Somalia, which is currently ruled by the German Empire. The German East African naval base is there. When he was captured in Ethiopia, there was an indigenous kingdom. The Austrian Empire, the predecessor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, failed many times in wars, and Italy also fought, but finally failed. Currently, This indigenous country has a good relationship with the Netherlands and Germany, and they have learned to use us to balance Britain and Italy. So it is safe. In the future, if your Majesty is tempted, you can actually attack their north from the south, occupy land, and expand territory to achieve greater achievements. Chulalongkorn was even more excited when he heard this. Joseph Bite, in the west is Uganda, where several ethnic groups live together. It is the territory of our Kingdom of the Netherlands. In the south is southern Kenya, and then our other territory Tanzania and other territories are connected together. Look here, they connect the east and west sides of the entire Central African continent. As an ally of the Netherlands, we are willing to take the Kingdom of Siam to play in the world. I hope your Majesty will cherish the opportunity given by your Majesty to show the strength of the Kingdom of Siam in the world. If Chulalongkorn was still hesitating about the gains and losses of territory before, then as Joseph Bite talked about the good intentions of the Netherlands, Chulalongkorn was always calm, but it depends on when. When you can become the first person in the history of the Kingdom of Siam to establish your own territory in Africa, you will definitely not be able to calm down. Even William IV guessed that even if Li Shimin opened a 1 square kilometer territory in Africa, it would have been celebrated by the Chinese 2 years ago and praised for 1,000 years. This is still a citizen of a big country, not to mention a monarch of a small country like Chulalongkorn. So under the instigation of Joseph Bite's log, it is not an exaggeration to say that they are not divided by the world. Therefore, the final agreement was quickly drafted and signed by both parties. Joseph Bite signed on behalf of William IV and Chulalongkorn. When everything was settled, both of them smiled. Your Majesty, you may be worried about gains and losses now, but I can say for sure that you will not regret signing today. Joseph Bite said to Chulalongkorn with a sincere face, I hope so, but I am more curious about how your Majesty William IV sees the status of the Kingdom of Siam in the eyes of the Netherlands. Or more directly, how the Netherlands will position the Kingdom of Siam in the world chess game of the Netherlands. Don't look at me like that. I have never thought that the Netherlands is a natural ally of the Kingdom of Siam. We must have something that the Netherlands needs or values. Just like this time on the Malay Peninsula, Joseph Bite, your Majesty is good at the geographical location of the Malay Peninsula, but you value the geographical location of the Kingdom of Siam, or how do you say it? Chulalongkorn asked. Joseph Bite, that's because Netherlands, Melbourne. Father, why do you think so highly of the Kingdom of Siam? Prince Albert asked. The Netherlands has been making plans around the Kingdom of Siam during this period. Joseph Bite went to Bangkok. He didn't know before, but his father, William IV, just told him the purpose of where the foreign minister Bite was going this time. This surprised him. He knew that it was important to take the Malay Peninsula, but that was to take it. Giving the long-established northern Kenya to the Kingdom of Siam seemed to be somewhat equal, and inconsistent with the practice of taking advantage of transactions between big and small countries, right? Britain supported Japan in the Western Pacific, which disgusted us, William IV said sarcastically. Then why don't we fight back and support a new Japanese Kingdom of Siam to repay them? The third chapter of Paying Back the Debt is here. Chapter 820, The Aftermath of Teji Upaladen's Visit to the Netherlands. 1880, Japanese Foreign Minister Takubo Toshimichi arrived in Melbourne, the capital of the Dutch-Australian continent, for a visit. There, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent a deputy minister to greet him at the dock where the warship was docked. Because Foreign Minister Joseph Bite was still visiting the Kingdom of Siam and Takubo Toshimichi was visiting as a special envoy of Japanese Prime Minister Seigo Takamori, Takubo Toshimichi met with Dutch Prime Minister Linden on October 2, 1880. The two held in-depth talks on behalf of their respective governments, and the content has not been announced for the time being. On October 4, 1880, Takubo Toshimichi was received by the Dutch Crown Prince Albert at the Dutch Royal Palace. Takubo Toshimichi presented a handwritten Japanese letter from the Japanese Emperor Meiji to William IV, which included a Dutch translation. In response, the 15-year-old Prince Albert entertained him on behalf of His Majesty William IV. The two agreed on exchanges between the two royal families. On behalf of the Meiji Emperor's royal family, Takubo Toshimichi invited Crown Prince Albert to visit Japan at an appropriate time to pave the way for William IV's visit to Japan in the future. Even Takubo Toshimichi eagerly expressed that it would be best to visit next year. To the surprise of the outside world, Prince Albert actually accepted the invitation. It seems that this is the reason why Prince Albert accepted the invitation to visit. On the 5th day of Takubo Toshimichi's visit to Melbourne, October 5, the negotiations between Dutch Prime Minister Lyndon and Takubo Toshimichi accelerated. By October 8, after 3 days of negotiations, several agreements were finally reached. When these agreements were announced, the politicians of Britain, France, the United States, Qing dynasty, guerrilla and other countries suddenly changed their colors, and even Chulalongkorn of the Kingdom of Siam was surprised. Qing dynasty, Jingji, Zhongli Yamen. The first point is that the Netherlands actually agreed to Japan's request, supporting Japan's proposal for the independence of Korea and Japan's claim to maintain its interests in the Korean peninsula. Is the Netherlands shooting a cold arrow at us? Bastards, these red-haired devils actually went back on their word. They promised us to fight against Japan and the Anglo-French alliance, but now the Japanese foreign minister has turned against us as soon as he arrived in Melbourne. Cixi was really furious in addition to being shocked. Even the usually amiable Empress Dowager Qian was furious. And standing in front of them was Li Hongzhang, the chief minister of the Zhongli Yamen. To be honest, Li Hongzhang was also angry about the Netherlands' actions. It was clearly agreed that they would fight against Britain, France and Japan together. The Qing dynasty was ready to use all its national strength to fight against Britain, France and Japan. Just as he exerted his strength to go out, he did not expect that the helpers lined up next to him would greet and chat with the supporters of the other side who were going to fight. This put the Qing dynasty in an awkward position. The most embarrassing one was him. After all, he had vowed to express the reliability of the Netherlands before, but now he was directly slapped in the face. It is not certain that his official hat will not be saved in front of the two big men in front of him. He could only secretly blame the Netherlands for causing great harm to others. Of course, his face showed indifference and pretended to be calm. Cixi sneered at Li Hongzhang and said, "Oh, I see that Lord Li is not changing his face. Is there something in his mind? I want to hear Lord Li's magic plan." Qian also stared at Li Hongzhang unhappily. In the past, her kindness did not involve state affairs, so she allowed Cixi to intervene in many things without caring about them. This time, she had to participate directly. Therefore, the pressure from the two queen mothers was directly pressed on Li Hongzhang. It would be a lie to say that Li Hongzhang was not panicking, but as a veteran who had been in the political arena for many years, he naturally knew how to adapt. So he bowed his head and said, "Please wait for me, Your Majesty, while I tell you in detail." Cixi did not frown, and sneered, "You are." Li Hongzhang did not hesitate to explain. "In fact, the Dutch ambassador in our country has informed our Prime Minister's office not long ago." Cixi asked in disbelief, "Before Japanese Foreign Minister Takubo Toshimichi visited the Netherlands?" "Yes," Li Hongzhang said with a matter-of-fact tone, "yes, from him, we got the word of their Prime Minister Lyndon." Cixi asked nervously, "What did he say?" After Li Hongzhang's brain worked quickly, he said calmly, "In order to defeat the tripartite alliance of Britain, France and Japan at a lower cost, the Netherlands took advantage of Japan's unwillingness to defend the Netherlands and let the Netherlands interfere. It was Japan's doubts about the Anglo-French-Japanese alliance and achieved the goal of breaking up the three countries. I am planning to cause internal strife among the 36 stratagems of ancient times." Cixi nodded, relieved and said, "So, we can just pretend to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to the Netherlands' acceptance of Japan's approach." Cixi looked at Li Hongzhang. Li Hongzhang secretly said, "I lied to you. If we really turn a blind eye, the Netherlands will really ignore us at that time. Of course, this won't work." So Li Hongzhang quickly replied, "No, we have agreed secretly, but facing the betrayal of our ally the Netherlands, we have the right to express dissatisfaction with this, so that Japan can believe that we and the Netherlands are really in a stalemate at this time, and at the same time let Japan believe that they have gained the trust of the Netherlands." Cixi and Qian were both stunned after hearing this, and then looked at Li Hongzhang with a serious face, and they immediately believed it 80%. Finally, Qian nodded to Cixi, and the latter softened her voice and said, "In this case, then follow the plan of you, the Chief Minister, and Prime Minister Lyndon. Remember, it is not allowed to harm the interests of our country, otherwise, you will be executed without mercy." Li Hongzhang breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that he had escaped a disaster. It is true that serving the emperor is like serving a tiger. But let's drink today, who cares? So he said with great certainty, "Yes, I will serve the country at all costs." On October 8, 1880, the Qing dynasty summoned the Dutch ambassador to the Qing dynasty, Dasdeo, to protest, expressing dissatisfaction with the Netherlands' close relationship with Japan. Li Hongzhang, the chief minister of the Zhuang Yamen, asked the Netherlands not to forget the domestic partnership agreement between the Qing dynasty and Korea. At the same time, Li Hongzhang also said that if the Netherlands was willing to support the Qing dynasty when it was fighting with Japan, the Qing dynasty was willing to negotiate trade opening with the Netherlands and reduce import tariffs to the Netherlands. The news that Japan was close to the Netherlands and the Qing dynasty was unhappy suddenly jumped into European and American newspapers, and European countries were eager to try. Among them, the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire directly expressed their willingness to be friends with the Qing dynasty in Berlin and Vienna. The German ambassador to the Qing dynasty and the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to the Qing dynasty frequently visited the Qing dynasty's Zhongli Yamen, seeking the Qing dynasty to relax its trade restrictions on the two countries. There were even rumors that the two countries were negotiating with Li Hongzhang, and that their weapons and warships would become the Qing dynasty's choice of weapons procurement. Chapter 821 Asia is no longer just Asia for Asians. Li Hongzhang of the Qing dynasty accused the Netherlands, but it made the world have a strange view of the Far East. Especially when the German Empire and Austria-Hungary suddenly showed goodwill to the Qing dynasty, other European powers joined the ranks. On October 13, 1880, the Portuguese ambassador to the Qing dynasty held talks with Li Hongzhang. The two countries promised to strengthen cooperation. The Qing dynasty proposed a firearms and talent plan to Portugal. Portugal said that it would send a technical staff to the capital at the beginning of next year to help the Qing dynasty develop its own firearms technology. 2 days later, on October 15, 1880, the representative of the Russian Empire in the Qing dynasty also met with Li Hongzhang. Facing the Russian Empire, the Qing dynasty was very polite. Li Hongzhang finally reached an agreement with the Russian Empire on peaceful cooperation in Northeast Asia. The Russian Empire promised to support the Qing dynasty's suzerainty in the situation on the Korean peninsula. The Qing dynasty recognized that the Russian Empire had security relevance on the Korean peninsula. The two sides promised to carry out local multifaceted cooperation when facing Britain, among which, they clearly opposed Britain's intervention in the Korean peninsula. Tsarist Russia also clearly expressed its opposition to Japan's invasion of Korea, a vassal state of the Qing dynasty. For this reason, the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs even directly condemned the Tsarist Russian Empire for meddling in other people's affairs, stating that Japan was a peaceful force in the Far East and that it would not have any ill will towards the Qing dynasty. In addition, the Stephen government of the United States also extended a hand of friendship to the Qing dynasty. The U.S. Congress passed a bill involving the Qing dynasty, and those who supported Stephen's proposal could allow the people of the Qing dynasty to study in the United States to strengthen the ties between the people of the two countries. Seeing that the United States was like this, other countries such as Germany, Austria, Portugal, and Russia followed suit. As a result, in the original history of the Qing dynasty, studying abroad actually exceeded the original 20 years in advance. And because the talks with ambassadors from many countries brought real benefits to the Qing dynasty, Li Hongzhang's title was said to be raised again. At this time, the Dutch media Australia Post suddenly leaked that after careful talks between Chulalongkorn of Siam and Dutch Foreign Minister Joseph Beit, the two countries reached an agreement on defense cooperation. According to the Melbourne Post, the Dutch Western Kingdom of Siam opened 4 bases, 2 of which may be located in the coastal area of the Kingdom of Siam in the north of the Gulf of Siam, also known as the Gulf of Bangkok. The Netherlands will lease a naval base in Prachuap Khiri, Phetchaburi, in the west of the Kingdom of Siam, Thailand, which will be managed by the Netherlands as the main body and Siam as the auxiliary. At the same time, the Kingdom of Siam will use Chanthaburi and Rayongport in the east as temporary bases for the Dutch Navy to train the naval hinterland of the Kingdom of Siam. The two navies will strengthen cooperation, and the Netherlands will fully help the Kingdom of Siam to build a navy at the level of a regional power within the next 20 years. It is not clear how many Dutch warships and troops will be involved in these 4 naval bases. In return, the Netherlands proposed to provide the Kingdom of Siam with military assistance, including submarines, so that the Siamese army can detect the situation in the Gulf of Siam and the South China Sea. The newspaper also pointed out that according to the alliance agreement signed by the Netherlands and the Kingdom of Siam, the Kingdom of Siam allowed the Netherlands to open military bases and ports across the country, including Dutch warships visiting Sumutprakan Port, Sumutprakan, at the outlet of Bangkok upon prior application. The ports of Prachuap Khiri Khan, Petbury, Chanthaburi and Rayong announced this time clearly support the entry of Dutch warships. This is the greatest trust agreement reached between one country and another without coercion. The news also pointed out that the two countries have reached an agreement to first enter the Dutch army in Prachuap Khiri Khan, and then expand the port scale to allow large-scale Dutch warships to enter in the future. This is the first time in the history of the Kingdom of Siam that a Western power has been allowed to establish a Western military base on its territory. It is considered to be a very important direct confrontation between the Kingdom of Siam and the Netherlands against Britain and France in the deployment of military forces in the Southeast Asian Peninsula to respond to the expansion of Britain and France in the Southeast Asian Peninsula. It is of great significance. According to the words of British and Dutch officials on October 15, the Australian Post said that the Netherlands hopes to reach a complete agreement this week, which is for the Kingdom of Siam to open up to 5 military bases to the Netherlands. Buckingham Palace, London, UK. Information provided by other Dutch newspapers shows that the port of Prachuap Khiri will be responsible for many operations of the Dutch army on the Malay Peninsula in Southeast Asia, especially as a strategic logistics center for the Dutch army in Southeast Asia, and plays a key role in the Netherlands' intimidation and defense capabilities. Let's see, in the Dutch East Indies, the waters between the Australian continent and the Dutch East Indies, later the Indonesian islands, the Netherlands has been patrolling and defending the day before yesterday. Across the Strait of Malacca in the north of the Dutch East Indies is the Malay Peninsula, and its west is the island of Sumatra itself. Claxton accused the Malay Peninsula of the Kingdom of Siam, which was sitting on the Siang, and said worriedly, "This is the territory of the Kingdom of Siam. We are threatening each other from 3 sides in the north, south and west of the Kingdom of Siam, but now Chulalongkorn has turned it upside down, trying to introduce the Netherlands to the port of Prachuap Khiri near our Burmese colony. This is using the Netherlands to check and balance us, and we are now competing with the Netherlands for the dominance of the Strait of Malacca, and even the port of Prachuap Khiri has been given to the Netherlands. I don't think Chulalongkorn can keep the southern part of the Malay Peninsula far away from Bangkok." Crown Prince Edward understood immediately and clenched his fists and said, "The Prime Minister said that behind the news, the Netherlands or the Kingdom of Siam has reached other undisclosed agreements. On the Malay Peninsula, the Kingdom of Siam has made greater concessions." Clayton nodded and said, "Your Highness, the Crown Prince is right. The Netherlands' influence on Southeast Asia is growing day by day. Although we have joined forces with France and seem to have the upper hand, France is currently strong on the outside but weak on the inside and dare not really confront the Netherlands. On the contrary, because of this, France's huge colonial physique sometimes became a concern for Napoleon III. He was afraid that after failure, the Far East would become penniless. After all, William IV's calculations against France were successful several times, and he had a shadow in his heart. Finally, he said, in addition, Japan's initiative to approach the Netherlands has given the Netherlands more energy to contribute to the Southeast Asian Peninsula. At this point, he felt depressed. Edward complained angrily, "We agreed to support Japan's rise, so we just built ships for Japan, and used almost the most advanced warship technology on Japanese warships, so that they can dilute the influence of the Netherlands in the southeastern Far East, invade Korea in the west, and make the huge Qing dynasty increasingly defeated so that we can reap the benefits. In the north, Japan can clamp down on the Russian Vladivostok port, encircle the influence and energy of the Russian Empire in the Far East, and especially disrupt the possible establishment of a Pacific Naval Alliance fleet between Russia and the Netherlands, and challenge us in the Indian Ocean in the future. But I didn't expect that Japan was helpless, and was frightened by the Netherlands, so it ran to Melbourne to recognize its relatives. Our expectations were in vain. Prime Minister, I think it's better to withhold the delivery of Japanese warships and ship them to them when they meet our political expectations." On the side, Queen Victoria opposed her son and said, "Behind the military agreement between the Netherlands and the Kingdom of Siam, Asia is no longer just Asia for Asians. Therefore, we cannot directly suppress Japan. Prime Minister, just give it a knock, and the real purpose is to demand benefits." Chapter 822, The Multipolar Era Under the British-Dutch Rivalry. Paksu Harbour is located in the west of the Kingdom of Siam, on the southeastern Siamese side of the British colony of Burma. The nearest position to the Burmese territory is only 50 miles away. If a conflict occurs, the Dutch Army's troops in the port of Paksa Harbor will be one of the first ground forces to respond to the British. With this base, the Netherlands can deploy more troops in the eastern part of the Malay Peninsula, closer to the front line of the conflict between the Kingdom of Siam and Britain in the Burmese border, and can also use it to support Cambodia across the sea. With the support of the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Siam announced the largest military construction plan since its founding in December 1879. The defense expenditure plan of the Kingdom of Siam in the next 5 years may reach 1/3 of Japan, an increase of 56%. The government of the Kingdom of Siam has also announced the revision of a number of security documents, announcing that the Kingdom of Siam will improve its counterattack capability and be able to launch attacks on military bases abroad that threaten the Kingdom of Siam when necessary. Queen Victoria said this, looking at the intelligence paper in her hand, her eyes shining, and said, "This Dutch Foreign Minister Joseph Beit was formerly the Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of Belgium, and he is also of Dutch descent." Later, together with Jules Darnetang, the former Belgian Prime Minister of the same Dutch descent, he founded the Socialist Party, the third largest party in the Netherlands, and became the chairman of the party's National Committee. His status was second only to Jules Darnetang, the party leader, and was higher than the Socialist Party's whip in the Senate, Marie Philip, and the whip in the House of Representatives, Hester. The Socialist Party has been greatly exposed in the international relations of the Netherlands. As the boss of the coalition cabinet government, does the Christian Party have any objections? When it came to this, Queen Victoria, who is always good at power struggles, began to think about whether she could gain benefits from the two major ruling parties in the Netherlands, the Christian Party and the Socialist Party, so she asked. Prince Edward's eyes lit up when he heard this. Yes, every party has its own interests. The Socialist Party, as the third largest party, frequently shows up in many things. I think the Christian Party is definitely not unanimous in supporting Prime Minister Linden. If we seize this issue and loosen the knot of this coalition cabinet government, there may be political unrest within the Netherlands, and in the end, the Netherlands will be unable to take care of itself. We can take the opportunity to take over the territory of the panicked Kingdom of Siam in Southeast Asia, so that the Netherlands will lose more than they gain and suffer a great loss internationally. At that time, Britain can completely gain a firm foothold in Southeast Asia, and even go a step further and point the sword across the Strait of Malacca at the Dutch East Indies and completely take control of the Strait of Malacca. Cleiston thought secretly, I want to do the same, but reality does not allow it to be as easy as you and your son say. So he said, it's only October 16th, and Joseph Beit's visit to the Kingdom of Siam on October 20th has not yet ended. This visit has attracted attention because of the acquisition of the 5 major bases of the Kingdom of Siam. Many people predict that the two countries may announce a major military cooperation agreement. In addition, according to news from our people in the Netherlands, Vice Admiral Portman of the East India Fleet, whose headquarters is in Jakarta, recently revealed that the armed forces of the Netherlands and the Kingdom of Siam are rapidly integrating their respective intelligence structures and expanding the scale of joint operations. He claimed that the Netherlands and its allies in Asia, the Kingdom of Siam and the Spanish-Philippine Army, are preparing for possible conflicts with Britain and France, such as the Kingdom of Siam. In addition, newspapers in Madrid, Spain have also reported that Spain is planning to reorganize the size of the Spanish Navy in the Philippines before 1885. It will not leave the European mainland and will start to supplement various subsidies with the Philippines as its combat system. It will learn from the Netherlands how to create a Spanish global naval combat group with rapid response capabilities for the defense of offshore islands, so as to improve the deterrence and response capabilities against traditional naval powers such as Britain and France, and at the same time be able to keep up with the Netherlands to form the most advanced naval alliance combination system in the world. Claxton said worriedly, according to the intelligence in the Netherlands, the Dutch Ministry of Defense also agrees with the plans and practices of the Spanish Ministry of Defense. More importantly, at a time when the military cooperation between the Netherlands and the Kingdom of Siam has been continuously breaking through, the military cooperation between the Netherlands and Siam has been advancing at an unprecedented speed. This is a milestone cooperation promoted by the Netherlands, Spain and the Kingdom of Siam respectively. At present, many people in London have pointed out that the Netherlands move is expected to provide the Netherlands with multiple strategic bases for action in the future when conflicts occur between Britain, France, Siam in Southeast Asia and Japan, Qing Dynasty and Korea in East and North Asia. The ports of Bashu in the Philippines are. As Clayton said this, Queen Victoria and her son suddenly looked a little embarrassed. Clayton was also very depressed. After all, as the Prime Minister of the Whig Party, he naturally understood that pleasing the Queen and the Crown Prince was very important for him to gain the support of the royal family in the upcoming British general election. Did you see that Disraeli, the old rival of the Tory party, has been frequently expressing his respect for the past? But who said he was the leader of the ruling party? Claxton sighed without explanation. Since the complete rise of the Netherlands, Germany, and the United States, it seems that a multipolar era has been formed. The dual-core game between Britain and the Netherlands has made all major powers eager to try. The French Empire, which originally had unlimited potential, was manipulated by Bismarck of Germany, so that the South formed the French Third Republic. France was divided into two halves, North and South. Napoleon III in the North guarded Paris, and his strength was halved. He was unable to fight against the increasingly powerful Germany. Therefore, the military breakthrough of the German Empire was no longer checked by France, and His Majesty Franz Joseph I of the Austro-Hungarian Empire no longer listened to our advice. He would rather get involved with Germany and form a quasi-alliance between Germany and Austria to advance and retreat together. This makes us, the British Empire, have no choice but to coexist peacefully when facing them. The Russian Empire is like a poisonous snake, entrenching in northern Europe and the northern end of the Eurasian continent, ready to strike at any place it likes. It seems to be in the Balkan Peninsula at present, but in fact it is mainly because the Siberian Railway has not been opened yet. Otherwise, the Russian Empire in the Far East will let people know the power of the two-headed snake. At present, the Russian Empire even continues to maintain a quasi-alliance relationship with the Netherlands, and actively uses the support of the Netherlands in the Far East to expand its influence there. We have to be on guard. Other countries such as Spain are also actively deploying in Asia. The intention is quite obvious. In the future, all over the world, the Netherlands will have to deal with fierce competition from powerful players as long as the pressure from Britain and the Netherlands is suppressed by each other. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 823, Germany also wants to establish a foothold in Asia? German Empire, Berlin. While the military strength of the Netherlands is growing, the British move is not bluffing. The two countries currently hold a European mentality of I cannot kill, but I must sharpen my sword. Under the competition between Britain and the Netherlands, the arms race of other countries is actually accelerating. In addition to the allies of the Netherlands, the military investment of European countries in the Far East is also quite conspicuous. Napoleon III has got on the British train and cannot get off. He has sent important figures from the Ministry of Defence to London to sign a significant defence agreement there. The reciprocal access agreement between Spain and the Netherlands is regarded as the most important agreement in more than 100 years when France and Britain faced Spain and the Netherlands in the 18th century. They are the same as the agreement between the Netherlands and Spain. It allows the two countries to plan and launch larger and more complex military exercises, and also deploy troops to each other in overseas territories instead of on their own. In addition to Britain and France, the Russian Empire has sent 10 warships from its naval fleet to the Far East, preparing to deploy in Vladivostok. Spain has publicly stated that it will recruit 50,000 indigenous troops in the Philippines. In addition, more than 100,000 Spanish white troops are deployed in the north and south of Luzon and Mindanao, which is the largest deployment of troops in history. France is considering migrating more than 200,000 French people to the colonies of North and South Vietnam. It seems that it is also migrating to the east like the Netherlands and Spain. In addition, Italy has also sent a diplomatic team to visit Japan. Obviously, Italy wants to take advantage of the triangular relationship between Britain, Japan and the Netherlands to intervene in the relationship between the two great powers. Japan may have seen the opportunity and has already purchased the technical production technology for manufacturing breech-rifled cannons from our German Empire, and Your Majesty has agreed to Japan's request. Austria-Hungary has reached an agreement with the Qing dynasty to further facilitate trade. Bismarck raised his head and looked at William I and Moltke the Elder. The German Iron Triangle looked at each other, and then Bismarck said, as early as 1878, the Netherlands had already formed a Russian coalition in South America, and together with Chile, formed a six-nation coalition. Now the Netherlands uses the South American alliance to help Mexico fight against the influence of the United States and Britain in the north, and is close to Austria-Hungary, making Mexico fully accept the quasi-alliance relationship of the South American alliance security system provided by the Netherlands. In addition, the three countries of the Central American Federation are getting closer. When we are making arrangements in the Far East, the Netherlands will not only respond, but also have the spare capacity to move step by step in America and erode other small forces in Latin America. Crown Prince Frederick, who seemed to be an audience, suddenly interrupted Bismarck and asked, "Hasn't the American Federation almost fallen out with the Netherlands?" President Stevens' relationship with the Netherlands is well known. He is willing to form a quasi-alliance with our German Empire, which allows the German Empire to gain a foothold in North America. It also has the capital to compete with Britain and the Netherlands. Bismarck retorted, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, I dare not agree with this." He ignored the fact that his frank words embarrassed Crown Prince Frederick, and said directly to the other party, "A quasi-ally is a quasi-ally, and is far from an ally." He then said, "The United States is different from our German Empire. The two-party system in the United States is more stable than the two parties in the United Kingdom. Stevens' Democratic Party government has offended the Netherlands and almost caused the Dutch capitalists to flee the United States en masse, resulting in the loss of millions of American jobs. It has not only angered the Dutch members of the Democratic Party and the senators and congressmen supported by the Dutch, not to mention that the Republican Party has already started the impeachment process, which seems to be to remove the other party from office. Now in New York, as long as you raise opposition to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, if you are a white-collar worker or a worker, you may be unemployed in the next moment, and your business may even go bankrupt. In this case, can those people in Washington have the final say? Crown Prince Frederick argued dissatisfiedly, but will Americans of other ethnic groups allow such tyranny of the Dutch? Bismarck smiled, then said coldly, "These days, who wants to make things difficult for their campaign sponsors? Does Your Highness the Crown Prince think that those congressmen will be vegetarians? What's more, millions of jobs and families are closely related to the factories of Dutch capital companies. No one is willing to make things difficult for their own jobs." Crown Prince Frederick wanted to continue to refute, but Bismarck shook his head and said in a softer voice, "As early as 1861 during the time of President Lincoln, the Netherlands was already an ally or even an alliance with President Lincoln, while we and the United States are following the path that they took nearly 20 years ago. In 1863, the Netherlands and the United States had a framework treaty, the Framework Agreement on Defense Relations between the Netherlands and the United States, and signed the General Military Information Security Italics, Memorandum of Agreement on Logistics Exchange, Intelligence Compatibility and Security Agreement, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Cooperation in the Americas Trade Agreement in the 10 years from 1865 to 1875. The Pacific Netherlands-America Free Trade Agreement and other pillars. The more Crown Prince Frederick listened, the more his heart sank. At this time, William I coughed falsely, and then, "World politics is good in Europe, but the rise of America, the migration of the Netherlands to the Far East, and the migration of Spain, all indicate that the weight of the Far East has increased rapidly, and we in Germany need to pay attention to it." What the Prime Minister said just now is right. Although America is on good terms with us, they have their own calculations. Even if Stevens supports the alliance between America and Germany, there are many people in America and the Democratic Party who oppose it, and it is still based on the fact that the Dutch and their allies do not object. With the migration of the Netherlands, various countries have shifted part of their focus to Asia. Britain, which pursues the business philosophy of using swords, and other European countries have also increased their military investment in the Far East. Although Japan has risen thanks to the support of Britain, its strength is about the same as Italy. As for the Kingdom of Siam, its strength can only be compared with that of the Kingdom of Greece, a country that respects the last place even in Europe. Although the Qing dynasty has absorbed Western technology and culture, it is too large internationally and chaotic internally, making it difficult to move forward in unison, and its strength is not scary. Guerrilla is just a piece of meat on a sticky board, and whoever likes it can eat it. Therefore, Asia is no longer just Asia for Asians. The surrounding environment in the Far East is not optimistic, and it is unlikely that the Netherlands will follow President Monroe's Monroe Doctrine. When William I said this, he showed his signature old fox smile and said, however, the more chaotic the better, so that the German Empire can make a move there and settle down. Make up for yesterday's chapter. Chapter 824 Netherlands-Spain South American Union Security Cooperation. Nothing is absolute in the world. This is absolutely true what German Prime Minister Bismarck said. On October 18, 1880, when everyone thought that the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States was seriously damaged, Martinez, Secretary General of the South American Union, visited Washington and met with Stephen Douglas, President of the United States of America, on the same day. He was accompanied by senior officials from the United States Department of Defense and the State Council. The State Council of the United States is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of a foreign country. After the talks, a joint statement was issued, which emphasized that the two sides would strengthen security cooperation and jointly respond to challenges in the Americas that harm the interests of the Netherlands and the United States. At the same time, in the joint statement, President Stephen also emphasized that the United States should respect the right of the South American Union to maintain the security of Latin America. Martinez, Secretary General of the South American Union, supported the role of the United States in stabilizing North America. As published in the Financial Times, as expected, this statement mentioned Britain again and made irresponsible remarks about Britain's normal military activities and military cooperation. The joint statement of the Netherlands and the United States said that Britain has strengthened its military power and expanded its military activities, and expressed concern about the joint actions of Britain and France in Southeast Asia, and opposed Britain's expansion of influence in the Americas. The French Empire's Le Figaro began with, the Secretary General of the South American Alliance visited North America and repeatedly exaggerated the challenge of Britain and France. On October 18, in Washington, the capital of the former British colony of the United States, the Secretary General of the Union of South America, Martinez, held talks with the President of the United States, Stephen Douglas. 5 days earlier, Martinez had visited Cuba, a Spanish colony in the Caribbean, and met with Lieutenant General Manuel, the head of the Spanish military in Cuba, and talked about the British challenge. The newspaper pointed out that although Martinez said that Britain was not a rival of the Union of South America when he held a press conference with Lieutenant General Manuel of Spain in Cuba, Britain had become much more important than other countries on the agenda of the Union of South America. He said, "We should engage with Britain on other issues such as the liberation of North American colonies, Latin American security and diplomacy, but at the same time, we are very clear that Britain poses a challenge to the values, interests and security of our alliance. In particular, Britain currently supports the independence of the Confederation of South America from the United States of America, which puts the Anglo-American relationship in a dangerous situation where war may break out at any time, not to mention that Britain also owns the colony of Canada in the north of the United States of America." Le Figaro, the most famous French newspaper in southern Europe, noted that this was the highest-ranking defense military official from Spain to visit the Netherlands after Spanish Prime Minister Praxedes visited the Dutch capital Melbourne. Martinez was a former Afrikaner patriarch and a South African hero who had defeated Britain. After surrendering to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, he became Deputy Minister of the Dutch Army, and later served as Vice Admiral, Commander of the Netherlands Navy Squadron, New Zealand Fleet. It was not until 1878 that the support force fought against the British forces there, and finally formed the Five-Nation Alliance of South America, established a secretariat, and became Secretary General. His Dutch military rank was also promoted to the same level of admiral as the Dutch Navy Minister and Army Minister, second only to the Chief of Staff, Military Attaché, and the Minister of Defense, Civilian. The visit of such an admiral-level officer and an important figure in the Hera military with international influence is definitely a big deal for Spain. Against the backdrop of the protracted Anglo-Dutch conflict, the turbulent situation in Europe, and the tense situation in Asia, the Secretary General of the South American Union visited North America. This visit exaggerated a British threat, which was undoubtedly an excuse for the United Kingdom to extend the tentacles of the South American Union, an organization that traditionally operates in South America, to North America, and to accelerate the creation of an American alliance centered on the security interests of the Netherlands. The British Times even published a headline strengthening security cooperation is the top priority of Martinez' trip to North America. In Washington, the United States, Martinez, Secretary General of the South American Union, and President Stephen of the United States stated in a joint statement that the world is in the most severe and complex security environment since the end of the Napoleonic Wars, at a turning point in history, and even more dangerous than the Napoleonic Wars, because this crisis affects the world, not just Europe. The statement pointed out that the UNASUR will strengthen cooperation between the United States and the UNASUR in the fields of maritime security, arms trade and maintaining political stability in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. We welcome the UNASUR to deepen its involvement in the Caribbean and the entire North American region, said U.S. President Stephen Douglas. The two meetings of the UNASUR organization, the North Atlantic Council and the Pacific Council, will be discussed on a regular basis. Earlier on October 18, 1880, Martinez also went to the Pentagon in Washington, visited the U.S. Department of Defense, inspected the operation of the U.S. military, and thanked the U.S. military and the President for their trust in the Netherlands and the South American Union. Earlier, when Martinez visited Cuba, he highly praised Spain's support for the South American Union and expressed his gratitude. He also looked forward to the role played by Spain and the Netherlands in the Far East, and expressed his willingness to cooperate with the Netherlands and Spain in the future with the support of member states to deal with the tension in the Far East, especially in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. He also said that the South American Union will strive to strengthen cooperation with Spain and the United States in various security fields, saying that Spain and the South American Union member states will resolve disputes recently, promote political reconciliation among countries, increase trade, and deepen military-industrial cooperation, which is worthy of recognition. Martinez also asked Spain to use its strategic location in Cuba to strengthen its military support for the South American Union warships, and suggested that Spain reconsider opening up its domestic market to allow goods from former colonial countries to enter Spain, and also suggested that other member states strengthen their trade policies with Spain. The London Journal, the third largest newspaper in the UK, also reported, behind the accelerated North Americanization of the South American Union, the Dutch Black Hand keeps emerging. Martinez arrived in Cuba on October 13 and began to take advantage of Spain's anti-British mentality to widely publicize that the Netherlands and Spain stand on the same side. The former Dutch Deputy Army Minister, now the Secretary General of the South American Union, who holds the power of the South American Coalition, began to launch anti-British rhetoric against Cuban residents in Spain after arriving in Cuba, trying to help the Netherlands gain favor and make Spain and the South American Union more closely unite to oppose the British design. However, this newspaper specifically reported that in Havana, Cuba, a group of more than 500 local people participated in a protest rally against the visit of Martinez, Secretary General of the Union of South American Countries, to Cuba, and expressed that they did not want a conflict between the organization and Britain to burn into Cuban territory. After Martinez arrived in Cuba, he held a 40-minute meeting with Lieutenant General Manuel. Both sides agreed to expand military joint activities around Cuba, further strengthen the organization's extended deterrence capabilities in the surrounding waters, strive for the Union of South American Countries to dispatch material support to Cuba in times of danger, and strengthen the security cooperation between the Netherlands, Spain and the Union of South American Countries. Now, when Stephen, the American president, softened his attitude, the United States has become the fourth security partner after the Netherlands, Spain and the Union of South American Countries, referred to as the Netherlands, Spain, the Union of South American Countries plus the United States. Chapter 825, Britain seeks reconciliation? It is worth noting that the extended deterrence capability refers to the armed protection that the Netherlands will provide to its allies when they find military attacks or threats, and will mobilize the military preparations and military and material systems of the South American Union to surround the Allies as if they were defending their own country. William IV made the above statement when he was asked in Melbourne about Martinez's visit to Cuba and Washington, USA. Queen Isabella II of Spain, who is in Madrid, commented that Martinez, Secretary General of the South American Union, further consolidated the status of the Spanish-Dutch alliance in the Global Comprehensive Strategic Alliance and expressed Spain's willingness to strengthen military cooperation with the South American Union. William IV said in Melbourne that the strength of the Spanish-Dutch alliance is stronger than ever and that the Netherlands will do its utmost to strengthen the joint defense interests and territorial security with Spain. The newspaper pointed out, it can be seen that the accelerated North Americanization of the South American alliance is closely related to the Netherlands' vigorous promotion of the All-America strategy. Some analysts pointed out that the Netherlands has significantly accelerated the pace of its global security architecture layout since the year before last, 1878. While exaggerating the atmosphere of public opinion of British challenge, it has pushed allies outside the Americas to connect with the South American alliance led by the Netherlands to form a regional and even global security architecture to contain Britain. However, the newspaper also pointed out that the Netherlands and the South American alliance have been constantly extending their black hands to North America and the Far East, which has aroused high vigilance among regional countries, especially powerful countries. The London Times quoted Pedro II of the São Paulo Daily, the first newspaper published in the Brazilian Empire, as saying, "The visit of Admiral Martinez, Secretary-General of the South American Union, is to bring a new conflict to North America, and it is a confrontational trip with military and diplomatic impacts. It seems to be a prelude to war." The newspaper also quoted Argentine President Petro as saying, "For decades, America has been peaceful and stable since Spain left, but since the Netherlands came, South America has begun to become chaotic. We hope that the South American Union can help America form an inclusive, open and equal security and cooperation framework, but the Netherlands is trying to expand the power of the South American Union by militarizing South America and even the entire Americas. At present, everything seems to be going well for them. I can only pray that the Netherlands can have more compassion and let South America have less war." The newspaper later reported that in response to the South American Union's seemingly exaggerated so-called British challenge, British Foreign Secretary Granville said on October 10, 1880, "Britain is a partner of countries around the world, including the Netherlands, not a challenge." Granville stressed that the South American alliance claimed that its position as a regional and defensive alliance has not changed, while constantly breaking through traditional defense areas and fields, and constantly strengthening security ties with Pacific countries and Nordic countries. The relevant trends have aroused high vigilance among regional countries. He also said sternly that the South American alliance should abandon the camp confrontation thinking against Britain and do more beneficial things for the security and stability of South America, the whole of America and even the world. He hoped that the local American countries would stick to the right path of cooperative and independent national defense in the Americas and play a constructive role in maintaining and promoting world peace, stability and development. Finally, the highest official in the British diplomatic field said that Britain would not rule out negotiations with the Netherlands to ease the relationship between the two countries, but the premise is that the Netherlands must give up the gradual camp against Britain and give up the priority of damaging Britain's interests. When the British Foreign Secretary made these remarks, it attracted the attention of countries around the world. The previous strong criticism of the threat of the South American alliance formed by the Netherlands, and the final turn, expressing willingness to reconcile, was obviously beyond the expectations of many people. Even many people have guessed that Britain has always been hard-nosed. Faced with a tough Netherlands, Britain finally softened. Granville's so-called prerequisites have caused a lot of ridicule. Among them, the spokesperson of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs used his mouth to directly ask the UK. Minister Granville asked the Netherlands not to harm the interests of the United Kingdom as a condition. The interests of the United Kingdom are there. If the interests of the Netherlands are included, does this mean that the Netherlands should give up its interests and fulfill the interests of the United Kingdom? Is this the attitude of reconciliation? In addition, the United Kingdom asked the Netherlands not to form a camp to fight against the United Kingdom. Get rid of it. We are forming a security team, a team to protect member states. We are not forming it to fight against the United Kingdom for the sake of good. If this is the case, wouldn't it be more appropriate to call it an anti-British alliance? The spokesperson of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who was firing on all cylinders, asked sarcastically, "The wars launched by the Netherlands in the past hundreds of years have been mainly to defend its own security, especially when Belgium was cut off from the Netherlands by Britain. I believe that historians from all countries should know the main reason for this 50 years ago. It was because of the national strength of the Netherlands at that time. After the three naval battles with Britain in the late 17th century and the mid-18th century, the Netherlands was replaced by Britain and became the hegemon of the North Atlantic. It absorbed the essence of the Netherlands and soon won the naval battle with Spain at the end of the 18th century and replaced it as the global maritime hegemon. In 1830, it was directly pointed out that Belgium was separated from the Netherlands, which will always be a pain for the Netherlands. Therefore, the Netherlands is now forming various alliance teams to increase its own defense, so as not to face the invasion and coercion of other powers including Britain at the latest to repeat the incident in Belgium. If increasing the self-defense capability also scares Britain, we can only say that the Netherlands will continue to do so and will never give up this power. I think other countries will also insist on having such power, unless this country is not worried that it will face the invasion of the Netherlands by Britain in the past, right? It seems that Britain wants to soften its stance this time. Queen Alexandra dismissed the maid, walked behind William IV's bed, and massaged his neck. William IV closed his eyes, enjoying this long-lost feeling. Facing his wife's question, William IV closed his eyes and said, "Cleston is a talent." Alexandra paused, then continued, "What do you mean?" "This is a clever test. First, while testing us in the Netherlands, it is also testing the attitude of Disraeli, the old rival of the Whig Party and the Tory Party. At the same time, it is also testing their own attitude within the Whig Party, who supports Greville to let Britain put aside its face and negotiate with the Netherlands. He dare not stand up himself for fear of being impeached, so he let Greville spread the word. Of course, he is also trying to test Europe and other countries in the world, killing two birds with one stone." Alexandra looked at her husband William IV with his eyes closed. She was stunned at first, then smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that I still need to learn more about political science. I am still too green." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.